The High Desert Precision Center sat like a fortress in the Nevada wasteland, its concrete walls absorbing the morning heat. Staff Sergeant Maya Chun stepped through the entrance, her duffel bag slung over one shoulder, and immediately felt the weight of eyes turning toward her. The lobby held a dozen men, all wearing the casual confidence of people who belonged. Maya recognized the type instantly. Elite precision shooters. The kind who competed internationally, who chased records at 2,000 meters and beyond, who spoke in ballistic coefficients and wind formulas like other people discussed weather. A tall man near the coffee station nudged his partner. $20, she doesn't make it past equipment check, he said, voice carrying across the tile floor. His name tape read Dalton. She'll wash out during practice. Maya kept her expression neutral and approached the check-in desk. The instructor behind it, a weathered man with Master Sergeant stripes, barely glanced at her paperwork. Chun, he said flatly. Marine Corps. Yes, Sergeant. He flipped through her qualification sheets. His eyebrows rose slightly. 1,800 meters. That your longest? Confirmed kill, yes. The room had gone quiet. Maya felt the silence like pressure against her back. The instructor set down the papers. Most competitors here have hits past 2,500. He folded his arms. Some past 3,000. I'm aware, Sergeant. So why are you here? Before Maya could answer, another voice cut in. Because someone told her this was the big leagues. The speaker was older, maybe 50, with the kind of weathered face that came from decades behind scope. His name tape identified him as Torres. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Probably figured a few combat deployments made her qualified. Maya turned to face him. I figured correct technique matters more than distance records. Torres laughed. It wasn't kind. Correct technique. He looked around at the others. You hear that? She thinks we don't know correct technique. Several men smiled. One shook his head slowly. The instructor cleared his throat. Equipment issue is at 0900. Range orientation at 10. Don't be late. He handed back her paperwork without meeting her eyes. Maya took it and headed toward the barracks wing. Behind her, conversation resumed in low voices punctuated by occasional laughter. She caught fragments. 1,800 meters. That's what? Intermediate range? My nephew could make that shot. The barracks were standard military issue. 30 bunks, half already claimed. Maya chose one near the back corner, away from the clusters of gear that marked established groups. She unpacked methodically. Rifle case, ammunition, range-finding equipment, logbook. You want the diversity hires? Maya looked up. A younger man stood in the aisle, maybe 25, lean with the restless energy of someone who'd never learned patience. His uniform was Army. Staff Sergeant Chun, Maya said evenly. Right? He didn't offer his own name. Just wondering if this is one of those quota things. You know, make sure the Corps looks progressive. Maya went back to unpacking. The man persisted. Because my CEO said they've been pushing to get more women into advanced programs. Nothing personal. Just seems like maybe they lowered standards to make it happen. Have you considered, Maya said without looking up, that maybe I'm just qualified? With an 1,800-meter record? He snorted. Sure. Totally qualified. He walked away before Maya could respond. She finished organizing her gear, locked her rifle case, and checked her watch. 40 minutes until equipment issue. By the time I'm asking, do any of you watching this know what the longest confirmed military sniper kill is? Drop your state in the comments if you know. I'm curious where all you shooting enthusiasts are watching from. The equipment issue room buzzed with activity. Men compared rifles, discussed modifications, debated ammunition choices. Maya got in line behind a broad-shouldered man who was explaining his custom barrel specifications to anyone who would listen. When her turn came, the supplies sergeant looked her over with barely concealed doubt. You bring your own weapon? Yes, Sergeant. Good. He handed her a packet of range maps and safety protocols. Because our loaners might be too heavy for you. Maya took the packet. I'll manage. The morning orientation gathered everyone on the primary range. 50 shooting positions stretched across manicured lanes, each equipped with concrete platforms and wind flags at 100-meter intervals. Beyond, The desert extended toward mountains that shimmered in the heat. The head instructor, a stone-faced man named Captain Morrison, stood before them. "This is not basic marksmanship," he began. "This is not infantry shooting. This is precision rifle craft at the highest level." Maya listened as Morrison outlined the program. Advanced ballistics, environmental calculation, equipment optimization, stress shooting, final qualification at ranges exceeding 2,000 meters. "Some of you," Morrison continued, "think combat experience translates to precision work. It doesn't." He paused, and Maya felt certain his eyes landed on her. "Combat is chaos. This is science." Dalton, standing 3 positions to Maya's right, caught her eye and smiled. He mouthed the word science and shrugged, as if to say, "See, you don't belong here." Morrison dismissed them to their assigned lanes. Maya found hers at the far end, isolated from the main clusters. Not surprising. She began setting up her equipment with the same methodical care she'd used for 6 years. Setting up next to her was Torres, the older shooter from the lobby. He glanced at her rifle, a standard M40 with minimal modifications. "That's what you're using?" "It's what I know." He shook his head. "Everyone else here is running custom builds. But hey, maybe that's all you need for 1,800 meters." Maya adjusted her scope mounts and said nothing. Torres continued, "I've got kills at 2,800. Morrison over there has confirmed hits at 3,100. He gestured down the line. "Half these guys have records past 2,500. He looked back at her. "So honestly, what made you think you belonged here?" Maya tightened the last mounting screw. "Maybe I wanted to see if distance was the only thing that mattered." Torres studied her for a moment, then smiled that same cold smile from earlier. "Well, I guess you're about to find out it is." The first practice session began at 1,300 hours. Maya watched the other shooters fire with aggressive confidence, sending rounds downrange at extreme distances. Misses were frequent, but celebrated. Close was good enough. Volume mattered. She waited for her turn, breathing steady, mind quiet. When Morrison called her lane active, Maya settled into position and found her target at 1,200 meters. Not impressive by this group's standards, but within her range of absolute certainty. She made her calculations. Wind, temperature, elevation. Then she waited, breathing, watching the flags, feeling the air. 3 minutes passed. Someone down the line muttered something about falling asleep. Maya exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. The target's center ring sparked with impact. Morrison checked the spotting scope. Hit. He sounded neither impressed nor surprised. First round. Maya cleared her weapon and sat back. Dalton called from his lane. "Hey, Chun, you planning to shoot more than once? Or is that too ambitious?" Laughter rippled down the line. Maya ignored it and began recording data in her logbook. The afternoon wore on. Shooters fired hundreds of rounds. Maya fired 23. Every single one hit center mass at her chosen ranges. By 1,600 hours, Morrison called end of exercise. He walked the line inspecting targets. When he reached Maya's, he paused. "All hits," he observed. "Yes, sir. Conservative ranges." "Effective ranges," Maya corrected quietly. Morrison looked at her for a long moment. "Tomorrow we push distance. Let's see how conservative you stay." He moved on. Behind her, Maya heard Torres talking to Dalton. "She's scared to miss. That's all it is. She knows she can't compete at real range, so she plays it safe and hopes no one notices." Dalton agreed. "Give it 3 days. She'll realize this isn't her level and request transfer." Maya packed her equipment in silence. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the desert in shades of copper and shadow. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new doubts, new reasons why she didn't belong. She'd heard it all before. In boot camp, in sniper school, in deployment after deployment where men assumed she'd earned her position through anything except skill. Maya secured her rifle case and headed toward the barracks. Behind her, the range fell quiet except for wind moving across empty lanes. She had 11 more days to prove that patience mattered more than distance. That discipline outweighed records. That the quiet ones who waited for the perfect shot were more dangerous than the loud ones who chased glory. 11 more days to show them what they'd missed while they were busy underestimating her. The desert wind picked up, carrying dust across the concrete platforms. Maya walked through it without looking back. Day 2 began before sunrise. Maya woke to the sound of men already moving through the barracks, their voices low and confident. She dressed quickly and headed to the range, arriving 15 minutes before the scheduled start time. Morrison was already there, clipboard in hand, studying the day's wind patterns. He glanced at her. "Early. Habit, Sergeant." He nodded once, neither approval nor dismissal, and went back to his notes. Maya began setting up her equipment, the familiar routine calming her mind. Check the rifle. Verify the scope. Lay out ammunition in precise rows. Other shooters arrived in clusters, talking about the previous day's performance. Torres and Dalton walked together, both carrying expensive custom rifles that probably cost more than Maya made in 6 months. Dalton noticed her and raised his voice slightly. "So I was looking at the scores from yesterday. Interesting pattern." He paused for effect. Everyone else averaged 15 to 20 shots per session. Chun here took 23 shots total. All day. Torres grinned. "Quality over quantity, right, Chun?" Maya continued her setup without responding. Morrison called the group to order. "Today we extend range. Minimum engagement distance is 1,500 meters. Maximum is as far as you can reliably hit." He looked around. "And by reliably, I mean first or second shot. We're not here to waste ammunition hoping for luck." The shooters spread to their lanes. Maya took her position and studied the targets. 1,500 meters, well within her capability, but the wind had picked up since dawn. She pulled out her data book and began calculations. Down the line, rifles cracked as shooters engaged immediately. Dalton fired 3 rapid shots at a target marked 2,200 meters. 2 misses, 1 near it. He cursed and adjusted. Torres took his time, methodical and confident. He fired at 2,600 meters. Mississippi. He adjusted and fired again. Another miss, closer this time. 3rd shot hit low. He smiled and recorded it as a success. Morrison moved down the line with his spotting scope, calling out hits and misses. When he reached Maya's lane, she was still calculating, still watching the wind flags dance at different distances. "Problem, Chun?" "No, sir. Just waiting for the wind to settle." Morrison checked his watch. "We don't always get perfect conditions in the field." "No, sir. But we don't always get unlimited time to shoot either." He raised an eyebrow. "Meaning?" Maya kept her eyes on the wind flags. "Meaning in actual combat. I wait for the moment when the shot is guaranteed, not when it's hopeful." Morrison said nothing for a long moment. Then he moved to the next lane. Maya continued observing. The wind was gusting inconsistently, shifting direction every 30 seconds. She watched the pattern, counting the intervals, learning the rhythm. After 8 minutes, she identified a lull in the cycle. She settled into position, controlled her breathing, and fired. The target at 1,500 meters rang with the impact. Center mass. Morrison checked through his scope. Hit. First round. Maya cleared her weapon and sat back. She'd fire again when the wind pattern repeated. Not before. 3 lanes down, Dalton laughed. 8 minutes for 1 shot. At this rate, she'll get through maybe 10 rounds by lunch. Torres agreed. Real combat must be convenient for her. Enemies probably wait around while she decides if conditions are perfect. Morrison didn't comment, but Maya saw him glance her direction. She pulled out her data book and recorded the wind pattern, the time, the temperature. Information that might matter later. The morning session continued. Shooters fired hundreds of rounds at ambitious distances. Maya fired 18 times, each shot carefully timed to wind lulls. 17 hits. 1 miss at 1,600 meters when she misjudged a cross breeze. By 1000 hours, Morrison called a break. The shooters gathered near the equipment shed, comparing performance. Dalton was animated, gesturing as he described a hit at 2,300 meters that took him 12 attempts. Chin scared to push distance, Torres said loud enough for Maya to hear. Staying comfortable at intermediate range where she knows she can't fail. A younger shooter, one Maya hadn't spoken to yet, joined the conversation. I don't know. 17 out of 18 is pretty solid. Torres shook his head. Solid for a basic marksman. We're supposed to be elite. That means taking risks, pushing limits. He looked directly at Maya, not hiding behind conservative shots. Maya sipped her water and said nothing. Arguing would accomplish nothing. Results would. After the break, Morrison gathered the group again. This afternoon, we introduce stress shooting. He gestured toward a modified course. You'll move between 3 positions under time constraints. Targets at varying ranges, unknown distances. You get 2 minutes to identify, range, and engage 3 targets. Minimum 2 hits to pass. The shooters murmured. This was closer to real-world application. Dalton looked excited. Morrison continued. This separates the range shooters from the operators. Anyone can hit paper when they've got all day to calculate. Let's see who can perform under pressure. They drew lots for shooting order. Maya pulled position 7 out of 12. She watched the first 6 shooters. Most rushed, fired rapidly, celebrated marginal hits. 2 failed to get the required 2 hits. The others scraped by with lucky shots after multiple attempts. Dalton went 5th. He sprinted between positions, fired 8 rounds total, got 1 solid hit and 1 questionable impact that Morrison generously counted. Dalton grinned and high-fived Torres. Torres went 6th. More controlled than Dalton, but still aggressive. 3 hits out of 7 shots. He looked satisfied. Then Maya's turn. She approached the first position and immediately began scanning for targets. Found one at approximately 1,800 meters. She took 3 seconds to verify the range with her scope's reticle, adjusted for wind, and waited. Breathing steady. Mind quiet. 15 seconds elapsed. Morrison called out. Clock's running, Chun. Maya exhaled and fired. The target dropped, a mechanical indicator confirming center mass hit. She moved to position 2. Scanned quickly. Target at 2,100 meters, partially obscured by desert scrub. She calculated the ballistic arc needed to clear the vegetation, adjusted her aim point 3 feet higher, and waited for the wind. 20 more seconds passed. Torres muttered something to Dalton. Both smiled. Maya fired. The target dropped. She moved to position 3. This target was closer, maybe 1,400 meters, but the angle was severe and the light had shifted since morning. She checked the time in her head. 1 minute 10 seconds used. 50 seconds remaining. She could rush the shot and probably hit. Or she could take 30 seconds and guarantee it. Maya settled into position and watched the wind flags. The pattern was different at this position, more erratic because of the terrain. She waited, counting breaths, feeling the rhythm. 30 seconds left. 20 seconds. The wind settled. Maya fired. The target dropped. She cleared her weapon and stood. 1 minute 58 seconds. 3 targets, 3 hits, 3 rounds. Morrison lowered his stopwatch. 3 for 3. He paused. First rounds. The other shooters had gone quiet. Maya walked back to the safe area and began cleaning her rifle. Dalton broke the silence. She got lucky with the wind timing. Torres nodded slowly, but he looked less certain. Maybe. Morrison moved to the next shooter without comment. The afternoon finished with the remaining 5 shooters. None matched Maya's performance. Best result was 2 hits out of 5 shots. As the sun dropped toward the mountains, Morrison gathered them for debrief. Today exposed a fundamental difference in approach. He began. Some of you are chasing records. Others are chasing effectiveness. He let that sit for a moment. Records look good on paper. They're impressive at competitions. But in operational environments, first-round hits keep people alive. He glanced around. Speed matters, but accuracy under pressure matters more. Dalton shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Morrison dismissed them. Maya packed her equipment in silence, aware of the change dynamic. The jokes had stopped. The open dismissals had quieted, but she could feel the resistance, the refusal to fully acknowledge what they'd witnessed. Torres approached as she was leaving. Good shooting today. Thank you. He hesitated. You really wait that long before every shot? In combat? Maya shouldered her rifle case. When I can, yes. What about when you can't? When the target's moving, situation's chaotic. Then I don't take the shot unless I'm certain. She met his eyes. Because I've never had to explain to a family why I took a hopeful shot instead of waiting for a guaranteed one. Torres considered that. His expression was harder to read now, less dismissive, more calculating. How many deployments? 3. All combat. Enough combat. He nodded slowly. Maybe I'm starting to see why they sent you here. Maya walked toward the barracks. The desert wind had picked up again, carrying dust and the fading heat of the day. Behind her, she heard Torres and Dalton talking in low voices. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Longer distances, worse conditions, more reasons to doubt. But today had shifted something. The outright mockery had faded into something more cautious. They weren't believers yet, but they were watching now. Maya entered the barracks and secured her equipment. 9 days remained. 9 days to demonstrate that patience wasn't weakness, that waiting wasn't fear, that the shooter who understood when not to fire was more valuable than the one who fired constantly hoping for glory. She lay back on her bunk and closed her eyes. Tomorrow Morrison would push harder. The others would look for ways to dismiss today's performance. That was fine. Let them watch. Let them doubt. Let them fire 1,000 rounds, trying to prove distance mattered more than discipline. When a moment came, when everything depended on a single perfect shot at the exact right instant, they'd understand. Maya had learned patience the hardest way possible. In places where mistakes meant people died. Where hesitation could be fatal, but rushing was suicide. Where the only thing that mattered was the absolute certainty that when you pulled the trigger, the target would drop. She'd teach them that lesson, whether they wanted to learn it or not. Day 3 brought clouds. Not enough to threaten rain, but enough to change the light conditions every few minutes. Maya studied the sky during breakfast, calculating how the shifting shadows would affect target identification at distance. The other shooters seemed energized. Dalton was talking about pushing past 3,000 meters. Torres sat with a group discussing equipment modifications. They'd moved past yesterday's unexpected results, already refocusing on their own goals. Morrison gathered them at 0700. Today we move to the advanced range. Targets from 2,000 to 3,500 meters. He paused. This is where most of you wanted to be. Let's see if you can perform. The advanced range sat 2 miles from the main facility, accessed by a dirt road that wound through rocky terrain. The shooting positions were built into a hillside, offering elevated angles across a vast valley. Target stands dotted the landscape at marked distances, some barely visible even with spotting scopes. Maya set up at her assigned position and immediately began assessing conditions. The wind was complex here, flowing through the valley in layers. She pulled out her databook and started recording observations. Morrison addressed the group. You have 4 hours. Engage at whatever ranges you're confident in. Minimum requirement is 3 hits at or beyond 2,000 meters. Rifles began firing within seconds. The shooters attacked the distant targets with enthusiasm, sending rounds downrange at impressive distances. Maya watched for 15 minutes, studying how the bullets traced through the air, learning the wind's behavior. Torres was shooting well. He had 2 hits at 2,400 meters. Dalton was struggling, firing repeatedly at 2,800 with no confirmed impacts. A shooter 3 lanes down was hitting consistently at 2,200. Morrison spent time with him, discussing technique. Maya finally selected her first target, 2,100 meters. She calculated carefully, adjusted for the elevation difference, and watched the wind. When the conditions aligned, she fired. Hit! She recorded everything in her databook and began preparing for the next shot. This time, 2,300 meters. The wind had shifted slightly. She waited. Dalton's voice carried down the line. Chen's taking forever again. What's she at? 1 shot in 20 minutes. Someone laughed. Maya ignored them and continued observing. The wind at her position was steady, but halfway to the target, it was gusting through a gap in the terrain. She needed to account for that transition zone. After 7 minutes, she identified the pattern and fired. The target rang with impact. Morrison came by her position. 2 for 2 at extended range. Respectable. Thank you, sir. You planning to push further? If conditions allow it, yes, sir. He nodded and moved on. The morning progressed. Other shooters were firing dozens of rounds each, celebrating hits, cursing misses. Maya fired 11 times over 3 hours. 10 hits at ranges between 21 and 2,600 meters. One miss at 2,700 when she misjudged the wind transition. By 1,100 hours, Morrison called break. Most shooters looked satisfied with their performance. Dalton had finally hit at 2,600 after 40-some attempts. Torres had multiple hits past 2,500. During break, a supply truck arrived with ammunition resupply. Maya checked her count. She'd used less than a quarter of her allocation. Torres noticed. You're not going to hit your requirement at this rate. I have 3 hits past 2,000 already, Maya said. Requirement met. Torres shook his head. The minimum isn't the goal. He gestured at the valley. This is about pushing limits, finding your maximum capability. Maybe I'm more interested in consistent capability than maximum. That's the difference, Torres said. We're here to be exceptional. You're here to be adequate. Maya drank from her water bottle and didn't respond. The clouds were thickening. The light would be even more challenging this afternoon. After break, Morrison announced a modification. This afternoon, targets are unknown distance. No range markers. You identify, calculate, and engage. This separates the calculators from the guessers. The mood shifted. This was significantly harder. Most shooters relied heavily on marked distances for their calculations. Maya actually preferred it. In combat, targets didn't come with range cards. Morrison randomized shooting order. Maya drew position 3. The first shooter took 20 minutes and fired 8 times for 2 hits. The second shooter did better, 3 hits and 5 shots, but admitted he'd guessed on 2 of them and got lucky. Maya stepped up. She scanned the valley and identified a target. Used her reticle to estimate range at approximately 2,400 meters. Cross-checked with terrain features and sight picture. Confirmed her estimate. Calculated the shot. Waited for wind. Fired. Hit. She selected a second target. This one was harder, partially concealed by terrain, requiring her to estimate not just range, but elevation differential. She took her time, working through multiple verification methods. Morrison watched through his spotting scope, but said nothing. Maya fired. Hit. Third target. Range approximately 2,800 meters, the furthest she'd attempted in the program. The light was shifting constantly with the clouds. She waited, watching the illumination patterns on the terrain, using them to judge wind movement. 5 minutes passed. She felt the other shooters getting restless behind her. The light steadied for a moment. Wind flags showed alignment. Maya fired. Hit. Morrison lowered his scope. 3 for 3. Unknown distances. First rounds. He paused. That last one was 2790. Maya cleared her weapon. Close enough, sir. She returned to the safe area. The next shooter stepped up, looking less confident now. Torres caught her eye. How did you range that last one without a marker? Multiple reference points. Sight picture comparison. Terrain analysis. Torres frowned. That takes time. Less time than firing 15 rounds hoping one connects. His expression hardened. You think you're better than us. Maya met his eyes. I think I'm more patient. The afternoon continued. Other shooters struggled with unknown distances. Most fired multiple rounds per target, adjusting after misses. Morrison grew increasingly critical of the guesswork approach. By 1,600 hours, he'd seen enough. He called them together on the hillside, overlooking the valley. Today, exposed something important. Morrison's voice was sharp. Most of you are range shooters. You're excellent when someone hands you data and perfect conditions. But operational shooting doesn't work that way. The group shifted uncomfortably. Chun. Morrison gestured to Maya. What's your hit rate been across 3 days? 52 shots fired, 50 hits, Maya answered. 2 misses. Morrison nodded. 96%. Under variable conditions. Unknown distances. Time pressure. He looked around. Most of you are running 40 to 60%. He let that sink in. Why? Because she's playing safe, Dalton said. Shooting distances she knows she can hit. Morrison's expression didn't change. What's her furthest hit this program? Dalton hesitated. 2700, maybe? 2790. Morrison crossed his arms. Unknown distance. First round. Shifting light. He paused. Anyone else hit that target? Silence. Morrison continued. I've run this course 14 times. I've seen shooters hit at 3200. I've seen incredible displays of long-range capability. He walked slowly along the line of shooters. But I've never seen anyone maintain over 90% first-round hits across this many variables. Torres spoke up. With respect, sir, isn't the point of this program to push maximum range? Morrison turned to him. Is it? Or is it to produce reliable precision shooters for operational environments? Torres didn't answer. Think about real missions. Morrison's voice was firm now. Hostage rescue. High-value target elimination. Counter-sniper operations. He looked at each of them. Do you get multiple attempts? Do you get time to dial in after a few misses? Or do you get one shot with everything on the line? The question hung in the cooling air. Morrison dismissed them. Tomorrow we begin scenario-based training. Real-world conditions. Limited time. High stakes. Start thinking like operators, not competitors. The walk back to the facility was quiet. The dynamic had shifted again. Maya could feel the resistance from the other shooters, but it was mixed now with something else. Uncertainty maybe, or the first crack of doubt in their own assumptions. Dalton walked past her quickly, avoiding eye contact. Torres lingered near the equipment shed, watching her pack up. He didn't speak, just observed with that calculating expression. Maya finished securing her gear and headed to the barracks. The clouds were breaking up, letting through shafts of late afternoon sun that painted the desert in gold and shadow. 8 days remained. Morrison was pushing them toward operational thinking, away from record chasing. That suited Maya perfectly. She'd never cared about records, only results. In her bunk, she reviewed her data book. 50 hits from 52 attempts. The 2 misses bothered her more than they should. Both had been preventable. One from insufficient wind reading, one from rushing when patience would have served better. She made notes on both. Learn from them. Don't repeat them. Outside, she heard the other shooters talking as they returned from the range. The tone had changed over 3 days. Less mockery, more wariness. They were starting to understand that different didn't mean inferior. Maya closed her data book and lay back. Tomorrow would bring scenarios designed to pressure them, to force decisions under stress. That was fine. Pressure didn't change fundamentals. You either had discipline or you didn't. She'd spent years building hers in places where failure meant more than missed targets. That experience couldn't be purchased or practiced in peacetime. It had to be earned through consequence. They'd see that tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, until the program's final challenge revealed who could perform when everything depended on a single perfect shot. Maya closed her eyes and let the familiar pre-mission calm settle over her. Rest now. Prepare mentally. Trust the training, trust the discipline, trust the patience that had never failed her when it mattered most. Day 4 began with Morrison changing everything. The shooters assembled at the range to find the familiar setup replaced by something more complex. Vehicle mock-ups, structural frames representing buildings, terrain features that created visual obstacles. This isn't a shooting range anymore, Morrison announced. It's an operational environment. He gestured across the modified landscape. Today you're not targeting paper. You're making decisions. The shooters exchanged glances. This was beyond their usual training. Morrison continued. Each scenario presents a tactical situation. Hostage rescue, VIP protection, threat elimination. You identify the correct target, assess the risk, and engage only when certain. He paused. Shoot the wrong target, you fail. Hesitate too long, you fail. Miss your shot, you fail. Dalton raised his hand. How much time do we get? Morrison smiled coldly. However long the scenario takes. Could be 30 seconds. Could be 30 minutes. That's part of the evaluation. The first scenario involved a hostage situation. 2 figures visible at 1,800 meters, one clearly armed, one potentially a hostage. The shooter had to identify which was which and engaged the threat without endangering the innocent. The first 3 shooters approached it aggressively. All 3 fired within 2 minutes. 2 at the wrong target. 1 missed entirely. Morrison's criticism was sharp and immediate. Torres went forth. He took more time, nearly 6 minutes, studying the scenario carefully. When he fired, he hit the correct target. Morrison nodded approval, though he noted the extended timeline. Maya drew position 7 again. She approached the scenario and immediately recognized the challenge. The 2 figures were positioned to make quick identification difficult. Both wore similar clothing. Both were approximately the same size. Only subtle differences in posture and positioning indicated which was the threat. She settled into position and studied them through her scope. The armed figure's weapon wasn't immediately obvious. He was holding it close to his body, using the hostage as partial concealment. Smart positioning. Maya watched their micro-movements. The hostage shifted weight nervously. The armed figure remained still, controlled. That stillness was telling. Trained behavior under stress. 3 minutes passed. She tracked the wind, calculated the shot, but didn't fire. Not yet. She needed absolute certainty about target identification. At 4 minutes, the armed figure made a small adjustment. His weapon became briefly more visible as he moved. Maya confirmed her assessment and prepared to fire. The wind shifted. She waited. At 5 minutes 10 seconds, everything aligned. Clear identification. Stable wind. Perfect light. Maya exhaled and fired. The threat figure dropped. The hostage figure remained standing. Morrison checked his scope. Correct target. First round. He recorded the time. 5 minutes 10 seconds. Acceptable timeline. Maya cleared her weapon. The next shooter stepped up looking nervous. The second scenario was more complex. Multiple figures at varying distances, some armed, some civilians. The shooter had to identify which posed an active threat and engage in correct priority order. Maya watched the first attempts. Most shooters fired at the closest armed figure first, which Morrison criticized as tactically unsound. The furthest figure was positioned to have clear shots at civilians. Priority should have been furthest to closest. When her turn came, Maya spent 8 minutes analyzing the entire scenario before firing a single shot. She identified 3 actual threats among 7 total figures, calculated which posed the most immediate danger based on positioning and sight lines, then engaged them in tactical priority. 3 shots, 3 hits, furthest threat first, working closer. Morrison reviewed her performance with his spotting scope. Correct threat assessment. Correct engagement order. First rounds on all targets. He made a note. Time was extended, but decisions were sound. Dalton approached Morrison during break. Sir, isn't speed important in these scenarios? If Chen's taking 8 minutes to analyze, people could die. Morrison turned to him. How many innocent targets did you hit during the multi-threat scenario? Dalton's face reddened. 1. But I was under time pressure. Self-imposed pressure. Morrison's voice was flat. The scenario had no clock. He gestured toward the range. Chen took time to be certain. You rushed and killed a civilian. Which approach is more professional? Dalton had no answer. The afternoon scenarios escalated in difficulty. Moving targets. Obscure targets. Targets that appeared and disappeared unpredictably. Each one designed to force decisions under imperfect information. Maya approached each with the same methodical patience. She accepted that some scenarios might require her to hold fire rather than take uncertain shots. Morrison seemed to approve of this restraint, even when it meant not engaging. One scenario particularly challenged the group, a target visible only briefly through a narrow window, appearing at random intervals. Most shooters fired multiple times whenever the figure appeared, hoping to connect. None succeeded. Torres came closest, hitting the window frame twice. Maya observed the scenario for 15 minutes before her attempt. She studied the timing between appearances. The pattern wasn't random. It repeated every 90 to 100 seconds, with the target visible for approximately 3 seconds each time. She also noticed the target always appeared in the same position within the window. Same height, same placement. That consistency was exploitable. Maya prepared her shot based on where the target would be, not where it had been. She calculated the exact aim point, adjusted for wind, and waited with her reticle settled on empty space. The pattern ticked forward in her mind. 90 seconds since last appearance. Target would appear in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The figure materialized in the window. Maya's crosshairs were already perfectly positioned. She fired immediately. Hit. Center mass. Morrison stepped back from his spotting scope. He studied Maya for a long moment. You anticipated the pattern? Yes, sir. How long did you observe before shooting? 15 minutes, sir. Morrison nodded slowly. That's operational patience. He raised his voice so the other shooters could hear. This is what separates adequate from exceptional. Chin spent 15 minutes learning the target's behavior before attempting the shot. Everyone else wasted ammunition hoping for luck. The other shooters were silent. Even Dalton had nothing to say. Morrison checked his watch. Final scenario for today. This one counts double weight in your evaluation. He led them to a new setup. A complex environment with multiple buildings, terrain features, and what appeared to be 20 or more figure targets at varying distances. Your objective is to eliminate a high-value target. Morrison gestured across the scenario. He's among these figures. You have to identify him based on behavioral and contextual clues, then engage. You get one shot. Miss or hit the wrong target. You fail completely. The difficulty was immediately apparent. 20 figures. One target. One chance. The first shooter took 10 minutes studying the scenario, then fired at a figure near the center. Wrong target. Morrison was blunt in his assessment. Failed. The second shooter took longer, nearly 20 minutes. Also selected wrong. Failed. Torres took almost 30 minutes. He fired at a figure positioned behind others, partially concealed. Morrison checked. Correct target. He paused. But you missed. Torres cursed under his breath. Maya drew last position. She was grateful for it. She'd watched the others' attempts and learned from their mistakes. She studied the scenario with fresh perspective. Morrison had said behavioral and contextual clues. That meant the target would be doing something different or positioned somewhere significant. She scanned methodically. Most figures were in open positions, clearly visible. A few were partially concealed. She focused on the concealed ones first. One was behind a vehicle. Two were near building corners. One was in a second-story window position. The window position caught her attention. It offered overwatch of the entire scenario, tactically superior to every other position. If she were the high-value target, that's where she'd be. Maya studied that figure carefully. Different posture than the others. More controlled, positioned to see everything while minimizing exposure. She calculated the shot. 2,300 meters. Elevated angle. Wind flowing up the valley. Light was fading as the sun dropped toward the mountains. She took her time, verified her calculations, checked and rechecked her assessment. This shot counted double. No room for error. 15 minutes passed. Morrison said nothing, just watched. Maya found her breathing rhythm. Let everything else fall away. There was only the reticle, the target, the wind, the calculation. The moment when everything aligned perfectly. She fired. The figure in the window dropped. Morrison was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke quietly into his radio. Range control confirmed target identification on scenario 5. The radio crackled. Target confirmed. High-value target eliminated. First round hit. Morrison turned to the group. Only 2 of you identified the correct target today. He looked at Torres. You found him, but missed the shot under pressure. He looked at Maya. Chin found him and made the shot. First round, at extended range, with failing light. The walk back was quiet. Maya could feel the shift in how the others viewed her. The dismissiveness was gone entirely now. What remained was harder to read. Respect, maybe, or resentment. Possibly both. Torres fell in step beside her. That window position. How did you know? Tactical advantage, Maya said. Best position in the entire scenario. Torres nodded slowly. I was looking for behavioral cues. Movement patterns. Didn't think about position advantage. Sometimes the best behavior is choosing the best position. They walked in silence for a moment. Then Torres spoke again. You're not what I expected. Maya glanced at him. What did you expect? Someone trying to prove something. He met her eyes. But you're not trying to prove anything. You already know. Maya didn't respond. They reached the facility and separated toward their respective equipment areas. 7 days remained. Morrison was pushing them harder each day, scenarios designed to expose weaknesses. Maya knew her own weaknesses well. She'd lived with them, worked through them, learned from them in environments where mistakes had permanent consequences. These men were excellent shooters, but they were learning, perhaps for the first time, the difference between being excellent at shooting and being excellent at the job. Maya cleaned her rifle with careful attention. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. She'd face them the same way she'd faced everything else, with patience, discipline, and the absolute certainty that when she fired, the target would drop. That certainty wasn't arrogance. It was earned through years of understanding that in the moment of decision, there was no room for hope. Only skill, preparation, and the patience to wait for the exact instant when success was guaranteed. Day 5 brought complications Morrison had only hinted at. The shooters arrived at the range to find additional personnel present. Senior officers, evaluators with clipboards. A Colonel Maya didn't recognize standing beside Morrison, observing everything with sharp attention. Morrison made introductions brief. Colonel Reeves will be observing today's exercises. Your performance is being evaluated for potential operational deployment. The weight of that statement settled over the group. This wasn't just training anymore. Real assignments hung in the balance. Reeves stepped forward. He was lean, weathered, with the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in special operations. I'm here to assess your suitability for precision missions in contested environments. He looked at each shooter. Range performance is one thing. Operational readiness is another. The scenarios today reflected that shift. First up was a scenario involving civilian presence. A hostile target among multiple non-combatants, everyone moving, patterns unpredictable. The difficulty was immediately apparent. Fire too early risks civilian casualties. Wait too long, lose the opportunity. The balance between patience and aggression. Dalton went first. He waited nearly 10 minutes for a clear shot. When he fired, the target was partially obscured and he missed. Morrison didn't comment, but Reeves made notes. 2 more shooters attempted the scenario. Both hit civilians by mistake, rushing their shots. Torres took a different approach. He waited 22 minutes, watching the movement patterns until the target separated completely from the civilian cluster. Then he fired and hit center mass. Reeves nodded approvingly. Patience with purpose. Maya drew position 6. She studied the scenario and immediately identified the challenge Morrison and Reeves had built in. The target would never fully separate. There would be moments of reduced risk, but never zero risk. The question was how much risk was acceptable. She watched for 18 minutes, mapping the movement patterns. She identified a recurring moment where the target moved briefly behind a barrier. Civilians moved to one side, creating a narrow window of maybe 2 seconds. The angle was difficult, the timing precise, but it was the lowest risk option available. Maya waited for the pattern to repeat. When it came, she fired through the narrow window. The target dropped. Morrison checked multiple angles with his spotting scope. Clean hit. No civilian endangerment. He looked at Reeves, who nodded. The morning continued with increasingly complex scenarios. Moving vehicles, targets at multiple elevations, time-sensitive situations requiring rapid assessment. Each one pushed the shooters harder. Maya maintained her methodical approach, accepting that some scenarios might take extended time to solve correctly. During break, Reeves approached her directly. Staff Sergeant Shun, your record shows 3 combat deployments. Yes, sir. Reeves studied her. Tell me about your longest-held shot. Maya considered the question. 93 minutes, sir. Observing a target compound. waiting for positive identification before engaging. Reeves raised an eyebrow. 93 minutes in position without moving? Target was high value, sir. Civilian presence was significant. I couldn't risk the shot until absolutely certain. And when you fired, first round, target eliminated. No collateral damage. Reeves made a note. That's operational discipline. He glanced at the other shooters. Most of these men have impressive range records. But range records don't predict field performance. No, sir. He looked back at her. You're not chasing records here, are you? No, sir. I am demonstrating reliability. Reeves almost smiled. Good answer. The afternoon scenario raised stakes further. Morrison called it counter-sniper engagement. Another shooter was positioned somewhere in the opposite hillside, targeting friendly forces. The mission was to locate and neutralize the threat before he could fire. The challenge was significant. The opposing shooter was concealed in natural terrain. No obvious indicators. The searcher had to identify position based on subtle cues, then engage before being detected. First, 3 shooters failed to locate the opposing position within the 30-minute time limit. Morrison's frustration was visible. Torres found the position in 27 minutes but missed the shot. The opposing shooter would have had time to relocate. Maya took her turn. She approached it as she'd approached counter-sniper work in theater. Don't search randomly. Think like the opposing shooter. Where would I position myself? She analyzed the terrain for positions offering good sight lines to the simulated friendly forces. Identified 6 possible locations, then narrowed based on concealment quality and escape routes. 2 positions remained viable. She studied both carefully through her scope. One showed disturbed vegetation, too obvious for a skilled shooter. The other appeared completely natural but offered slightly better angles. Maya focused on the natural peering position, watched for any sign of presence. At 17 minutes, she caught the briefest glint of glass. Scope reflection, momentary but unmistakable. She calculated the shot to that exact point. Wind was gusting unpredictably. She waited for it to settle. At 23 minutes, she fired. Direct hit on the opposing shooter's position. Morrison confirmed through radio. Target eliminated. He looked at Reeves. 23 minutes to locate and engage a concealed opposing sniper. First round hit. Reeves wrote extensively in his notebook. The day's final scenario was announced as high-risk precision. A hostage situation where the hostile was using the hostage as a shield, weapon pressed to the hostage's head. The only exposed target was a 2-inch section of the hostile's head. The difficulty was extreme. Miss by inches and you hit the hostage. Range was 1,900 meters. The pressure was immense. Morrison's voice was serious. This is the scenario that separates the confident from the capable. If you're not certain you can make this shot, you hold fire. There's no shame in recognizing limitations. The first shooter studied it for 5 minutes, then declined to shoot. Smart decision, Morrison acknowledged. The second shooter spent 15 minutes preparing, then fired. Mississippi. He'd pulled the shot slightly left under pressure. Dalton declined after 10 minutes of consideration. Torres took nearly 40 minutes. His preparation was meticulous. When he fired, he hit the hostile, but the impact was close enough to the hostage that Morrison called it a questionable shot. In real operations, that might have injured the hostage despite hitting the target. Maya studied the scenario carefully. The hostile's head position was stable. The hostage was terrified, but not moving erratically. Wind was moderate and predictable. The shot was makeable, but it required absolute certainty and perfect execution. She spent 35 minutes in preparation. Verified her calculations multiple times. Studied the light, the wind, every variable that could affect the shot. She accepted that she had one attempt. No adjustment, no second chance. At 35 minutes, everything aligned. Her breathing was controlled. Her position was solid. The crosshairs settled on the precise point needed. Maya fired. The hostile figure dropped. The hostage remained completely unharmed. Morrison checked through his scope for a long moment. Then he lowered it and looked at Reeves. Perfect shot. 0 risk to hostage. Reeves approached Maya's position as she cleared her weapon. Staff Sergeant. How many times have you made a shot like that under actual operational conditions?
Twice, sir.
Both successful? Both successful, sir. Both hostages recovered safely. Reeves nodded slowly. That's why you didn't hesitate. You've already proven you can do it. I've proven I can do it when I'm certain, sir. Maya met his eyes. If I wasn't certain, I wouldn't have fired. Reeves turned to Morrison. She's exactly what we need. The debrief was different today. Morrison stood before them with Reeves beside him. Today wasn't about impressive shooting, Morrison began. It was about operational readiness. The ability to make life-and-death decisions under pressure. He looked at Torres. You showed excellent patience and tactical thinking. Several of your shots were combat-ready. Torres nodded, accepting the assessment. Morrison continued down the line, offering measured feedback to each shooter. When he reached Maya, he paused. Chun, you've demonstrated something rare in this program. Morrison glanced at Reeves. Consistent first-round accuracy across every variable we've introduced. Tactical decision-making that prioritizes mission success over personal achievement. And operational discipline that comes from actual combat experience. The other shooters listened in silence. Reeves stepped forward. Most of you will graduate this program as excellent precision shooters. Some of you may receive operational assignments. He paused. Staff Sergeant Shin already operates at the level we're trying to develop in the rest of you. The words hung in the air. They were dismissed. Maya packed her equipment slowly, aware of the changed atmosphere. The doubt was gone completely now. What remained was a kind of recognition she hadn't sought but couldn't avoid. Torres approached as she was leaving. You've done this before. Real missions like today's scenarios. Maya nodded. How many? Enough to know that the shot is the easy part. It's everything before the shot that matters. Torres absorbed that. I've been chasing records for 10 years. Thought that's what made someone elite. Records prove you can shoot, Maya said. They don't prove you could do the job. He considered that. What does prove it? Making the shot that matters when everything depends on it. Then living with the consequences. Torres had no response to that. Maya continued toward the barracks. 6 days remained. But something fundamental had shifted. Morrison and Reeves weren't evaluating whether she could perform anymore. They were evaluating how to use her abilities. The other shooters knew it too. The competition had evolved into something different. They weren't trying to prove she didn't belong. They were trying to prove they belonged alongside her. Maya cleaned her rifle and prepared her equipment for tomorrow. Whatever Morrison planned next would be harder, more complex, designed to push them to their absolute limits. That was fine. She'd been to her limits before, in places where the stakes were measured in lives rather than scores. These scenarios were preparation. Important preparation, but still controlled. The real test would come later, whenever that operational deployment materialized. When the target was real, the pressure was absolute, and patience would be the only thing standing between success and catastrophe. Maya had that patience. She'd earned it the hardest way possible. Now she just had to maintain it for 6 more days while proving, again and again, that the quiet ones who waited were more dangerous than the loud ones who rushed. Day 6 arrived with unseasonable weather. Dark clouds rolled across the desert, bringing wind that gusted unpredictably and occasional bursts of rain. Morrison surveyed the conditions and smiled grimly. Perfect, he announced to the assembled shooters. Combat doesn't wait for good weather. The shooters looked less enthusiastic. Shooting in rain meant scope lens issues, wind calculation nightmares, and rapidly changing conditions. Maya simply adjusted her equipment covers and prepared for a challenging day. Morrison outlined the plan. Today is about adaptation. Conditions will deteriorate throughout the day. Your job is to maintain effectiveness regardless. They moved to the range. The wind was already problematic, shifting direction every few minutes. Rain came in waves, sometimes light mist, sometimes heavy enough to obscure distant targets. The scenarios today were simpler in concept, but harder in execution. Standard target engagement at various ranges, but with weather as the primary obstacle. Dalton fired first. He attempted shots at 2,400 meters and struggled immediately. The wind pushed his rounds off target repeatedly. After 7 attempts with no hits, Morrison moved him to closer ranges. Other shooters fared similarly. The conditions were brutal. Even Torres, usually reliable, was hitting maybe 40% of his attempts. Maya approached her lane and assessed the situation differently. Fighting the weather was futile. She needed to work with it instead. She began by observing wind patterns at multiple distances. In stable conditions, wind was relatively predictable. Today, it was chaotic, but even chaos had patterns if you watched long enough. 15 minutes of observation revealed something useful. The wind gusts followed a rough cycle. Periods of intense turbulence followed by brief windows of relative calm. The windows were short, maybe 10 to 15 seconds, but they were consistent enough to use. Maya selected a target at 2,200 meters and prepared her shot. Then she waited. Rain drummed on her equipment. Wind tugged at her position. She remained motionless, watching the flags. The wind settled into a brief lull. Maya fired immediately. Hit! Morrison checked his scope. She's adapting to the wind cycles. Maya repeated the process. Watch, wait for the lull, fire. It meant fewer shots per hour, but her hit rate remained high. By mid-morning, frustration was evident among the other shooters. They were burning through ammunition with minimal results. The weather was winning. Morrison called them together. What's the difference between fighting conditions and working within them? Torres spoke up. Chen's waiting for the lulls. Using the calm periods. Morrison nodded. Exactly. You can't force shots in conditions like this. You have to be patient enough to recognize when opportunity presents itself. The lesson was clear, but implementing it was harder for shooters accustomed to aggressive engagement. After break, Morrison introduced a new element. Time pressure with weather complications. A scenario where the target would be exposed for only 5 minutes. If you couldn't make the shot in that window, mission failure. The challenge was brutal. 5 minutes wasn't long, especially when most of that time might have impossible wind conditions. First 2 shooters failed entirely. They waited for perfect conditions that never came, and time expired. The third shooter fired in poor conditions and missed repeatedly. Torres approached it strategically. He prepared everything in advance, then fired during the best available moment within the time limit. Not perfect conditions, but acceptable. He hit on his 4th attempt with 90 seconds remaining. Maya studied the scenario carefully. 5 minutes. Target at 2,600 meters. Wind was vicious today, gusting to 25 miles per hour. She did all her calculations first. Wind correction, elevation, everything she could prepare in advance. Then she settled in and watched. 2 minutes passed. Wind remained too unstable. 3 minutes. A brief lull, but it broke before she could fire. For minutes, Maya remained focused. She wasn't fighting the clock. She was reading the wind. At 4 minutes 20 seconds, the wind settled. Not perfectly calm, just reduced enough to make the shot viable. Maya fired without hesitation. Hit! Morrison checked his watch. For minutes, 23 seconds. Under pressure, she still waited for the right moment. Reeves, observing again today, made notes. The afternoon brought worse conditions. The rain intensified. Visibility dropped. Morrison pushed them anyway. This is the scenario nobody wants, he told them. Hostile target, imminent threat, terrible conditions. You don't get to wait for better weather. You make it work or the mission fails. He set up a scenario with a 30-minute window. Target would be vulnerable for that period, but conditions were as bad as they'd been all day. Shooters began firing immediately, trying to connect before conditions worsened further. Most struggled. The wind was fierce, the rain constant. Maya took a different approach. She spent the first 10 minutes just observing. She accepted that conditions weren't going to improve. This was as good as it would get. She identified the pattern in the chaos. The wind gusted from multiple directions, but there was a dominant direction underlying the turbulence. If she calculated for that base wind and accepted some variability, she could account for most of the effect. The rain was steady enough to be predictable. It would affect bullet trajectory consistently. At 12 minutes, Maya made her calculations based on the average conditions rather than waiting for perfect ones. She fired. Mississippi. The wind gusted at the wrong moment. She recalculated, increased her wind correction slightly, waited 30 seconds for her next attempt. Fired again. Hit. Morrison lowered his scope. She adjusted after the first miss and corrected immediately. That's adaptive shooting. The other shooters were watching now, seeing how she worked through the problem rather than fighting against it. By 1600 hours, Morrison called end of exercise. Everyone was cold, wet, and exhausted. They gathered in the facility's briefing room to dry off and debrief. Today tested your ability to perform under adverse conditions, Morrison began. Most of you struggled because you were waiting for conditions that weren't coming. He gestured to the window where rain still fell steadily. In combat, you don't get to pick the weather. You work with what you have. Dalton spoke up. How are we supposed to hit at extended range when the wind is that unstable? Morrison looked at Maya. Chun, answer that. Maya set down her coffee. You stop trying to find perfect conditions and start working with acceptable conditions. Calculate for the average, accept some variability, and adjust based on results. But that means accepting misses, Dalton said. Maya nodded. Sometimes. But one adjusted hit beats 20 shots waiting for perfect conditions that never arrive. Torres added, she missed once this afternoon, corrected, and hit the second shot. I fired 11 times before I connected. Morrison let that observation sit for a moment. Adaptive shooting means recognizing when your approach isn't working and changing it. Stubbornness gets people killed. Reeves stood from where he'd been listening in the back. Today demonstrated something critical. Technical skill matters, but mental flexibility matters more. He looked at each shooter. The ones who adapted performed better than the ones who didn't, regardless of their range records. The group was quiet. Reeves continued. Real operations involve bad weather, equipment failures, intelligence gaps, time pressure, and stress you can't simulate in training. The shooters who succeed are the ones who adapt without losing effectiveness. After dismissal, Maya returned to the barracks and stripped her wet equipment. Everything needed cleaning and maintenance after the day's conditions. Torres appeared in the doorway. Mind if I ask you something? Go ahead. How do you stay so calm? He gestured outside where rain still fell. That was miserable today, but you never seemed bothered. Maya continued cleaning her scope. Because being bothered doesn't change the weather. It just makes me shoot worse. Torres sat on a nearby footlocker. I've been doing this for 12 years. Won championships. Set records. He paused. But today made me feel like a novice. Weather is always the hardest variable, Maya said. Because you can't control it. You can only control your response to it. Is that something they teach in the Marines? Maya smiled slightly. It's something combat teaches. When conditions are bad and the mission still matters, you figure out how to adapt or you fail. Simple as that. Torres nodded slowly. 5 days left. Morrison's going to keep pushing harder. Probably. You worried? Maya looked at him directly. I've been worried every day. Worry keeps you sharp. Overconfidence gets you killed. Torres absorbed that. Then he stood. Thanks for the honest answer. After he left, Maya finished her maintenance work. 5 days remained before the program's final evaluation. Morrison and Reeves were clearly building towards something significant. The weather today had been a test of adaptability. Tomorrow would likely test something else. Maya couldn't predict what, but she could prepare mentally for whatever came. Outside, the rain continued. The desert drank it in, transforming temporarily into something different. By tomorrow, it might be dry again, or it might still be raining. The weather would do what it wanted. Her job was to perform regardless. Maya locked her equipment and lay back on her bunk. The building creaked in the wind. Somewhere down the hall, shooters talked in low voices about the day's challenges. She closed her eyes and ran through mental drills. Wind calculations, range estimation, target identification. The fundamentals that didn't change regardless of conditions. 5 more days. Then whatever came next. Deployment, probably, based on Reeves' presence and comments. Real missions. Real stakes. Maya had been there before. She'd go there again. The only question was whether she'd go alone or with some of these shooters alongside her. That depended on the next 5 days. on whether they could adapt the way she had, whether they could set aside their pursuit of records and focus on reliability. Time would tell. It always did. Day 7 brought clear skies and an announcement that changed everything. Morrison gathered the shooters at 0600 earlier than usual. Colonel Reeves stood beside him, along with 2 additional officers Maya didn't recognize. Morrison's expression was serious. Today begins your final evaluation phase. The next 5 days will determine operational deployment assignments. The weight of those words settled over the group. Final evaluation. Real assignments on the line. Reeves stepped forward. You've demonstrated technical proficiency. Now we assess your capability under operational pressure. He gestured to the 2 officers. Major Hendricks and Captain Soto will be running realistic mission scenarios. Your performance will be evaluated against actual operational standards. Major Hendricks spoke next. He was compact, intense, with the look of someone who'd spent years in special operations. These aren't training exercises anymore. We're simulating real missions with real consequences. His eyes moved across the shooters. You'll work in teams. You'll face equipment failures, intelligence gaps, and situations with no perfect solutions. Maya felt the tension increase among the group. This was beyond what they trained for. Captain Soto continued. First scenario begins at 0800. You'll receive mission briefing 30 minutes prior. He paused. One more thing. You're being evaluated individually, but mission success requires team coordination. Your ability to work with others matters as much as your shooting. They were dismissed to prepare equipment. Maya noticed the shooters forming clusters, already beginning to discuss team strategies. Torres caught her eye and nodded toward a quiet area. They're going to partner experienced shooters with less experienced, Torres said quietly. Probably put you with someone who needs mentoring. Maya checked her rifle. Makes sense for team evaluation. Dalton approached surprisingly. Look, I know we got off on the wrong foot. He shifted his weight. If we end up partnered, I'll pull my weight. Maya met his eyes. I know you will. He seemed surprised by her confidence. You do. You're a good shooter, Dalton. You just focused on the wrong metrics. But you can adapt. Yesterday proved that. Dalton nodded slowly and walked away looking thoughtful. At 0730, mission briefings began. Maya drew a partner assignment with a younger Army shooter named Rivera. He looked nervous. Rivera spoke quietly. I'm probably the weakest shooter here. Sorry you got stuck with me. Maya reviewed the mission brief. We're a team. That means we use each other's strengths. The mission was complex. Hostage rescue in an urban environment. Multiple buildings, civilian presence, 2 hostile targets that needed simultaneous elimination to prevent hostage execution. Range approximately 2,300 meters. Time window of 45 minutes from scenario start. The challenge was immediately apparent. Simultaneous shots meant coordinating perfectly with a partner. No room for error. Rivera read through the brief, his anxiety visible. I've never coordinated a shot like this before. Maya studied the terrain map. Then we practiced the coordination before we worry about the shots. She pointed to the diagram. You'll take the north building target. I'll take south. We'll establish communication protocol and timing signals. But what if I miss? Then we have backup plans. Maya looked at him directly. But you won't miss if we prepare correctly. They spent 20 minutes reviewing the scenario, discussing sight lines, calculating ranges, establishing hand signals for coordination. Maya watched Rivera's confidence build as they worked through the problem methodically. At 0800, they moved to their assigned position. The scenario was set up across a complex valley with realistic building mock-ups and multiple target figures. Other teams were positioned at different locations. Maya could see Torres partnered with Dalton in a position to their east. She and Rivera set up carefully. Maya took the southern building target, Rivera the northern. They verified ranges, calculated wind corrections, and established their timing protocol. The scenario began. They had 45 minutes to identify the correct targets among multiple figures, establish clear shots, and coordinate simultaneous engagement. Maya located her target within 8 minutes. A figure holding what appeared to be a weapon, position near hostage. She confirmed identification through multiple observations and prepared her shot. Rivera was taking longer. Maya waited patiently, using the time to monitor wind conditions and verify her own calculations. At 20 minutes, Rivera whispered, "I've got my target identified. Range is 2280. Good." Maya spoke calmly. "What's your wind call?" 5 miles per hour, right to left. Confirmed. Maya checked her own wind reading. Same here. Are you ready to coordinate timing? Rivera took a breath. Yes. They established their sequence. Maya would count down from 5. Both would fire on 0. At 32 minutes, with both shots prepared and conditions stable, Maya began the count. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fire. Both rifles cracked simultaneously. Both targets dropped. Morrison's voice came over radio. Team Chen Rivera, dual target elimination confirmed. Hostages secure. Mission success. Rivera exhaled heavily. We did it. Good shooting, Maya said. Your wind call was perfect. You talked me through it. Rivera secured his weapon. I would have panicked without your guidance. You had the skill. You just needed to trust it. To their east, Torres and Dalton had also succeeded, though their timing had been less precise. Other teams had mixed results. One team failed entirely when one shooter missed, and the hostage was theoretically executed. The morning continued with 2 more scenarios. Maya was partnered with different shooters each time. One was experienced and confident, making coordination easy. The other was struggling with stress and needed significant support. Maya approached each partnership the same way. Assess their capability, build their confidence, establish clear protocols, execute the mission. By lunch, Hendricks gathered the teams for initial assessment. Some of you performed well. Others struggled with coordination. He looked at Maya. Team Chen showed consistent success across multiple partner assignments. That's the flexibility we're looking for. Reeves added, individual skill matters. But operational missions require working effectively with whoever you're assigned. The ability to adapt your approach to different partners is critical. The afternoon scenarios increased complexity. Multiple teams coordinating, longer ranges, more variables. Maya found herself working with Torres on a counter-sniper mission that required them to locate and neutralize 2 opposing shooters while protecting simulated friendly forces. Torres was all business. He'd shed the earlier arrogance and focused entirely on mission success. They worked together efficiently, combining Maya's tactical patience with Torres' aggressive target identification. They located and eliminated both opposing shooters within the time limit. Morrison called it textbook coordination. During a brief break, Torres spoke quietly. I've been thinking about what you said, about records versus reliability. Maya waited. About the longest confirmed kill in this program. 3,100 meters. Torres looked out across the range. But I've been tracking my hit rate. It's 58%. He paused. Yours is 94%. Different approaches, Maya said. Torres shook his head. No. Different priorities. I chased the impressive shot. You chased the certain shot. He met her eyes. In real operations, your approach keeps people alive. Both approaches have value. Maybe, but I'm starting to think yours has more. The day's final scenario was announced as high-stress team coordination. For shooters, for targets, all engagements must occur within a 30-second window. If any targets survive the window, mission failure. Maya was teamed with Torres, Dalton, and Rivera. For different skill levels, for different approaches, one shared objective. They had 20 minutes to plan before execution. Maya facilitated the discussion, ensuring everyone understood their role and the coordination sequence. Dalton would engage first, easiest target. Rivera second, medium difficulty. Torres third, challenging angle. Maya last, most difficult shot requiring the others to succeed first. The pressure was significant. Each shooter depended on those before them. At execution, Dalton fired on time and hit. Rivera fired 2 seconds later and hit. Torres fired at 5 seconds and hit. Maya's target was partially concealed by terrain, requiring the others to succeed so she could use the full remaining time. She had 23 seconds to make an extremely difficult shot at 2,800 meters through a narrow gap. Maya settled into position, controlled her breathing, found the rhythm. At 18 seconds remaining, she fired. Hit! Morrison's voice was immediate. All targets eliminated. Mission success. Time to spare. Reeves approached their team position. That was flawless coordination. Each shooter performed their role perfectly. He looked at Maya. Your planning made it possible. Team effort, sir, Maya said. Everyone executed. But you organized the execution. Reeves made notes. That's leadership capability. The debrief that evening was extensive. Hendricks and Soto reviewed each team's performance, highlighting strengths and weaknesses. Maya's name came up repeatedly as an example of effective team coordination. After dismissal, several shooters approached her, not to question or challenge, but to ask advice. How did you stay calm during the four-target scenario? How did you assess Rivera's capability so quickly? Maya answered each question honestly. She'd learned these skills the hard way, through missions where coordination failures meant casualties. She couldn't give them years of experience, but she could share what she'd learned. Torres found her as she was cleaning equipment. For days left. Whatever Morrison and Reeves have planned, it's going to be harder than today. Probably, Maya agreed. You worried? Maya smiled slightly. Always. But worry keeps you sharp. Torres nodded. I'm starting to understand that. He paused. Whatever happens in the next 4 days, I'm glad I got to work with you today. Learn more in one afternoon than I did in 10 years of competition shooting. You already had the skills. Just needed different context. After he left, Maya finished her maintenance and reviewed her notes from the day. The evaluation had shifted from individual performance to team effectiveness. That made sense for operational deployment. 4 days remained. Each one would push harder, demand more, expose weaknesses. Maya was ready. She'd built her career on understanding that preparation and patience mattered more than raw ability. The final 4 days would prove whether the others had learned that lesson, whether they could set aside ego and focus on mission success, whether they understood that the impressive shot wasn't always the right shot. Maya locked her equipment and headed to her bunk. Outside, the desert night was clear and cold. Stars filled the sky, sharp and countless. For more days. Then deployment. Then real missions with real stakes. She'd been there before. She'd go there again. And maybe this time, she'd go with a team that finally understood what operational precision really meant. Day 8 began with Morrison looking grim. The shooters assembled in the briefing room instead of heading directly to the range. That alone signaled something different. Reeves stood at the front with Hendricks and Soto. Behind them, a large screen displayed what appeared to be satellite imagery of an actual compound. Morrison spoke first. Today's scenarios are based on real intelligence from active operational theaters. The situations you'll face are scenarios we've actually encountered or expect to encounter. The room went silent. Reeves continued. Your performance today directly influences deployment assignments. He gestured to the screen. We have missions that need precision shooters. The question is which of you are ready? Hendricks stepped forward. First scenario is based on a compound raid that went wrong 6 months ago. Hostile forces have early warning systems. Our assault team needs those systems eliminated before they can approach. He pointed to the imagery. For communication arrays. For shooters. Simultaneous elimination required or the entire operation is compromised. The technical challenge was immediately apparent. The arrays were small targets at varying ranges. Simultaneous hits meant perfect coordination with no communication once shooting started. Soto added, you'll have 30 minutes to plan. Then you execute in radio silence. Any array that remains functional compromises the mission and theoretically costs lives. They divided into a 4-person team. Maya, Torres, Dalton, and a Marine shooter named Patterson. All experienced, all capable, all feeling the weight of what they were simulating. They studied the imagery carefully. Array 1 was at 2,600 meters, relatively exposed. Array 2 at 2,300, partially concealed. Array 3 at 2,900, requiring a high-angle shot. Array 4 at 2500, but with a narrow window of engagement. Maya suggested assignments based on capability and position. Torres took Array 3, the longest and most difficult. Dalton took Array 1, straightforward but requiring him to set the timing. Patterson took Array 2. Maya took Array 4 with its narrow engagement window. They established hand signals for coordination since radio would be simulated as compromised. Visual confirmation of readiness. Then Dalton would fire first. The others would fire in sequence 1 second apart. At execution, they moved to positions and began preparation. Maya could see the others in her peripheral vision. Torres was methodical in his setup. Dalton looked focused. Patterson was steady. 15 minutes of preparation. Each shooter verified ranges, calculated corrections, prepared for the sequence. Dalton raised his hand. Ready. Patterson followed. Ready. Torres. Ready. Maya checked her calculations one final time. The narrow window required precise timing. She raised her hand. Ready. Dalton's hand dropped. He fired immediately. Array 1 sparked and went dark. 1 second. Patterson fired. Array 2 eliminated. 2 seconds. Torres fired at the extreme range. Array 3 destroyed. 3 seconds. Maya's turn. She timed her breath to the sequence. Exhaled and fired through the narrow window. Array 4 went dark. Morrison's voice carried across the range. All arrays eliminated. Perfect timing. Mission success. The team maintained position for debriefing. Hendricks approached with Reeves. Flawless execution, Hendricks said. That scenario has been run 12 times in training. You're the second team to achieve complete success. Reeves added, more importantly, you adapted the plan to each shooter's strengths. That's tactical thinking. The morning's second scenario was more complex. A vehicle interdiction where the target vehicle would pass through a kill zone for exactly 7 seconds. Multiple shooters had to eliminate the driver and 2 security personnel to stop the vehicle. If any hostile survived, the vehicle would escape. 3-person team this time. Maya, Torres, and Rivera. The challenge was the short time window combined with the need to verify targets before shooting. Killing civilians meant mission failure. They planned carefully. Rivera would take the driver, visible through the windshield. Torres would take the front passenger. Maya would take the rear passenger, hardest shot because of the vehicle's angle. 7 seconds. 3 targets. No mistakes. They rehearsed the coordination mentally. When a vehicle entered the kill zone, Rivera would fire immediately at the driver. Torres would fire 1 second later at the front passenger. Maya would fire when she had positive identification on the rear passenger, regardless of timing. The scenario began. A vehicle appeared moving at simulated speed across the range. Maya tracked it through her scope. Rivera fired. Driver eliminated. Torres fired. Front passenger down. Maya was tracking the rear passenger. The angle was difficult. She needed absolute certainty it was a hostile and not a hostage or civilian. At 5 seconds, the angle shifted enough. She confirmed hostile indicators and fired. Target eliminated at 6.3 seconds. Morrison confirmed mission success. Vehicle interdicted. All hostiles eliminated. No civilian casualties. Reeve made extensive notes. Break came at 1100. The shooters gathered quietly, feeling the intensity of the evaluation. These weren't games anymore. The scenarios were too real, the stakes too clear. Torres approached Maya. That vehicle scenario. You waited until almost the last second to fire. Had to confirm the target, Maya said. What if you'd run out of time? Then the mission would have failed. But shooting without confirmation would have failed it too. Torres nodded slowly. 6 months ago, I would have fired as soon as I saw a figure in that rear position. Wouldn't have waited to verify. What changed? Torres looked at her directly. I started thinking about consequences. About what happens when you fire without being certain. He paused. You live with that, don't you? The weight of each shot. Maya was quiet for a moment. Every shot I've taken in combat, I remember. The ones that worked and the ones that didn't. That's why I wait for certainty. The afternoon brought the day's final scenario, and it was announced as the most difficult yet. Hendricks briefed them with unusual gravity. Hostage rescue in an active combat zone. Multiple hostiles. Multiple hostages. Chaotic environment. Time sensitive. And here's the complexity. He pulled up new imagery. You won't know which figures are hostiles and which are hostages until you observe their behavior. No clear indicators. The shooters exchanged looks. This was beyond anything they'd trained for. Soto continued. You'll have two spotters feeding you information, but they might be wrong. You have to verify independently before engaging. And you have 45 minutes before the hostages are moved and the opportunity is lost. Four-person team. Maya, Torres, Dalton, and Patterson again. They approached it systematically. Set up with overlapping fields of view. Established communication protocols. Agreed that no one would fire without confirmation from at least two team members. The scenario began. Multiple figures appeared in and around the compound mock-up. Some moved aggressively. Others moved cautiously. Some carried visible weapons. Others didn't. The spotters began calling out potential targets. Hostile at north window. Possible hostile near the vehicle. Figure with weapon entering the east door. Maya observed carefully. Some of the spotted figures were behaving like hostiles. Others were ambiguous. She marked 3 definite hostiles based on behavior patterns. Aggressive movement. Handling. Positioning that suggested guard duty rather than captivity. Over the radio, she heard the others confirming their own assessments. Torres had identified 2 hostiles. Dalton 3. Patterson 2. They cross-referenced. 5 unique hostiles identified with multiple confirmations. Maya marked 3 more possibles that needed more observation. 20 minutes elapsed. The team continued watching, verifying, building certainty. At 30 minutes, one of the spotters called urgent traffic. Hostage movement detected. They're being relocated. Window is closing. The pressure spiked immediately. They had to engage now or lose the opportunity. Torres spoke over radio. 5 confirmed hostiles. 3 possibles we can't verify. Recommend engaging the 5 confirmed and holding on the possibles. Maya agreed. Confirmed. 5 targets. Assign and coordinate. They divided the targets. Established firing sequence to eliminate the most dangerous positions first. Maya took the hostile position nearest to the hostages' highest risk target. At 33 minutes, they executed 5 shots in rapid sequence. All 5 confirmed hostiles eliminated. The 3 possible hostiles remained. No one had fired at them because confirmation was incomplete. Morrison called in scenario. He approached their position with Reeves and the other evaluators. 5 hostile eliminations, Morrison began. All confirmed through proper observation and verification. He paused. 3 potential targets remained unengaged. Hendricks spoke. Those 3 unengaged figures were civilians being used for forced labor. If you'd fired without verification, mission would have failed. The weight of that statement hung in the air. Reeves stepped forward. This scenario has been run 8 times. Every previous team engaged at least 1 civilian. You're the first team to maintain discipline and only engage verified threats. He looked at each of them. That's the difference between adequate and exceptional. You had time pressure. You had spotters calling targets. You had every reason to fire at those additional figures. But you maintained discipline. The debrief lasted an hour. Hendricks and Soto went through each scenario in detail, highlighting decision points and discussing alternative approaches. When they finished, Reeves stood. Tomorrow we escalate further. You've proven you can handle complex scenarios with preparation time. Now we test your ability to perform under unexpected complications. The shooters were dismissed. Maya walked back with Torres and Dalton. Both looked exhausted. Dalton spoke first. That last scenario. I almost fired at one of those civilians. Had him in my crosshairs. Something told me to wait. Trust that instinct, Maya said. When you're not certain, waiting is almost always right. Torres added, 6 months ago I would have fired at all 8 figures and justified it later. Watching you work through these scenarios has completely changed how I think about the job. They reached the equipment area. Maya began her cleaning routine. 3 days remained. Whatever Morrison and Reeves planned, next would push them to absolute limits. But today had shown something important. The others were learning, adapting, thinking about consequences instead of just capabilities. Whether they'd learned enough for whatever came next remained to be seen. Maya finished cleaning her rifle and locked her equipment. Outside, the sun was setting over the desert, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. 3 more days, then the real test, then deployment, then missions where the scenarios weren't simulations and the targets didn't reset when someone made a mistake. She'd trained for that reality her entire career, had lived it in combat. Now she was teaching it to others, whether she'd meant to or not. The quiet ones who waited were more dangerous than the loud ones who rushed. That lesson had been written in consequences over years of operational experience. 3 more days to prove it one final time. Day 9 arrived with tension thick enough to cut. The shooters knew the program was building towards something significant. Morrison's expression at breakfast confirmed it. At 0700, they assembled in the briefing room. Reeves stood with Morrison, Hendricks, and Soto. Behind them, new faces. Senior officers Maya didn't recognize. Official observers. This was more than training evaluation now. Morrison began without preamble. The final assessment begins today and continues through day 11. Everything you've learned will be tested under conditions designed to expose any remaining weaknesses. Reeves stepped forward. You'll face equipment failures, intelligence errors, time pressure, and scenarios with no clear right answer. He looked across the assembled shooters. How you respond will determine your operational readiness. One of the senior officers spoke next, a colonel with special operations insignia. I am Kenel Barnes. I command the unit some of you may deploy to. He paused. We need precision shooters for high-risk operations. Not everyone here will qualify. That's not a failure. It's recognition that these missions require specific capabilities. The message was clear. Some would make the cut. Others wouldn't. Hendricks outlined the day's structure. 3 scenarios. Increasing complexity. Limited preparation time. You'll work in rotating teams, so we can assess individual performance across multiple partnerships. The first scenario seemed straightforward at first. Counter-sniper mission. Locate and eliminate an opposing shooter before he could target friendly forces. 20-minute time limit. Maya partnered with Patterson. They moved to position and began scanning for the opposing shooter's location. At 5 minutes, they hadn't located him. Patterson was getting anxious. Maya remained calm, working through potential positions systematically. At 7 minutes, Morrison's voice came over radio. Equipment failure. Your primary scope is compromised. Switch to backup. Maya immediately transitioned to her backup optic. The magnification was lower. The clarity reduced. She had to recalculate everything. Patterson cursed quietly. This changes everything. Maya kept scanning. We adapt. Keep searching your sector. At 12 minutes, Maya caught movement in a position they'd already cleared once. The opposing shooter had relocated. Smart. She tracked him carefully with a backup optic. The shot would be harder with reduced magnification, but it was makeable. Got him, she said quietly. 2,600 meters, ridge position, partial concealment behind rock formation. Patterson confirmed visual. That's a tough shot with backup optic. Maya calculated carefully. Wind was moderate. Angle was challenging. With her primary scope, it would have been straightforward. With backup, it required absolute precision. At 15 minutes, she fired. The opposing shooter's position registered a hit. Morrison confirmed. Target eliminated. Mission success despite equipment failure. The second scenario introduced intelligence complications. They received briefing on a high-value target location, then discovered upon arrival that the intelligence was partially wrong. The target was in a different building than indicated. Maya teamed with Dalton. They had to locate the actual target, verify identity, and engage within 30 minutes. At 10 minutes, they'd identified a figure that matched the target description, but in the wrong location from the briefing. Dalton spoke over radio. Target possibly identified, north building, second floor. But intel said south building. Maya observed carefully. The figure matched physical description and behavioral patterns. Either Intel was wrong, or this was someone else. They spent 5 more minutes gathering, confirming details. Mannerisms, movement patterns, security posture around the figure. At 16 minutes, Maya made the call. Target confirmed. Intel was wrong about location, but right about identity. Recommend engagement. Dalton agreed. Confirmed. I have a shot. He fired. Target eliminated. Morrison's debrief was immediate. Intelligence error was intentional. You adapted and verified independently rather than trusting bad information. That's critical thinking. The morning's third scenario was announced with unusual gravity. Hendricks looked serious as he briefed them. This scenario has no perfect solution. You'll face a situation where any decision involves risk. Your job is to assess, choose the best option, and execute with full awareness of consequences. The scenario involved a vehicle checkpoint. Multiple vehicles approaching. Intelligence suggested one carried explosives. Stop the wrong vehicle and the bomb gets through. Stop the right vehicle too late and it detonates. Engage too early without confirmation and you might kill civilians. 4-person team. Maya, Torres, Rivera, and a shooter named Chun. They had to make rapid assessments of each vehicle and decide which to stop. The vehicles began moving through their observation zone. Maya tracked them carefully. First vehicle showed no obvious threats. Second vehicle had occupants behaving nervously. Third vehicle sat lower on its suspension, suggesting heavy cargo. Torres called it. Third vehicle. Weight distribution indicates possible explosives. Maya continued observing. The nervous behavior in Vehicle 2 bothered her. Sometimes actual threats behaved normally while decoys acted suspicious to draw attention. She spoke over radio. Continue observing Vehicle 2 as well. Behavioral indicators are concerning. Rivera confirmed. Vehicle 2 occupants are watching the checkpoint, not the road ahead. That's surveillance behavior. At the critical decision point, Maya made the call. Engage Vehicle 2 first. If we're wrong, we still have time to stop Vehicle 3. Torres took the driver of Vehicle 2. Maya took the front passenger. Both fired simultaneously. Morrison's voice came immediately. Vehicle 2 confirmed as threat vehicle. Explosive device located. Vehicle 3 was a decoy to split your attention. Reeves approached their position. You questioned the obvious answer and made the harder assessment. That saved the mission. The lunch break was subdued. The morning had been intense, exposing how quickly situations could become complicated. The shooters discussed the scenarios quietly, processing the lessons. Barnes, the special operations colonel, circulated among them. He stopped at Maya's position. Staff Sergeant Chun, your service record shows 3 deployments. Orcombazon. Yes, sir. How many times have you faced scenarios similar to this morning? Multiple times, sir. Equipment failures happen. Intelligence is often incomplete or wrong. And most situations don't have clear right answers. Barnes nodded. That's why you performed better than shooters with more impressive range records. You've already learned these lessons under real consequences. The lessons stay with you, sir. Barnes studied her. If you're selected for deployment, it won't be as a student anymore. It'll be as a senior operator who others look to for guidance. Understood, sir. After he moved on, Torres approached. What did Barnes want? Just discussing deployment possibilities, Maya said. You're definitely getting selected. Everyone knows it. Maya shrugged. Nothing's certain until it's official. The afternoon scenario was announced as the day's ultimate test. Soto briefed them with unusual detail. Combined operation. Multiple teams working toward a single objective. Communication between teams is critical. Individual excellence matters, but mission success requires coordination across all elements. They divided into 3 teams of 4. Maya's team included Torres, Dalton, and Patterson. Each team had specific objectives that supported the overall mission. The scenario simulated a compound assault. Team 1 would eliminate perimeter security. Team 2 would neutralize internal threats. Team 3 would secure the objective and protect extraction. Maya's team drew Objective 2. Internal threats in a complex building with multiple rooms and uncertain target locations. The challenge was immediate. They couldn't see what Team 1 was doing. They had to trust that perimeter security would be eliminated on schedule. If Team 1 failed, Team 2 would walk into an ambush. They prepared their approach carefully. Established communication protocols. Assigned sectors of fire. Built in contingencies for if Team 1's timing slipped. The scenario began. Team 1 engaged perimeter targets. Radio traffic indicated mixed success. Some targets eliminated, others proving difficult. Maya's team held position, waiting for confirmation that their approach was clear. Dalton was getting anxious. Torres maintained discipline. At 8 minutes, Team 1 confirmed perimeter secure. Maya's team moved forward. They encountered the first internal threat at 11 minutes. Torres eliminated it. Second threat appeared unexpectedly. Patterson engaged and hit. The building was more complex than briefing indicated. More rooms. More potential threat positions. At 15 minutes, they cleared 3/4 of the structure, but time was running short. Team 3 needed them to finish so extraction could begin. Maya made a tactical decision. Torres and Patterson would finish clearing. She and Dalton would establish Overwatch to support Team 3 immediately. They moved to position. Team 3 was encountering unexpected resistance at the extraction point. Maya and Dalton provided precision fire support, eliminating threats that were pinning down the extraction team. At 23 minutes, all objectives were complete. Mission success across all 3 teams. Morrison gathered everyone for combined debrief. Today tested your ability to adapt to changing conditions, work across multiple teams, and make decisions with incomplete information. Barnes stepped forward. Some of you excelled. Others struggled. He looked around. Tomorrow brings the final evaluation. A comprehensive scenario that combines everything you've learned. Reeves added, after tomorrow's performance, we'll make deployment selections. He paused. Not everyone will be selected. That's not a reflection on your ability as shooters. It's recognition that these specific missions require specific capabilities. The evening was quiet. Shooters prepared equipment and reviewed notes. Maya sat alone, thinking through the past 9 days. Torres found her before lights out. Tomorrow's the big one. Everything comes down to whatever Morrison and Reeves have planned. We prepared for it, Maya said. That's all we can do. You nervous? Maya considered the question. Always. But nervous keeps you sharp. Torres nodded. Whatever happens tomorrow, you've changed how I think about this job. About what it means to be a precision shooter versus someone who just shoots at precision ranges. That's a good evolution. After he left, Maya reviewed her equipment one final time. Tomorrow would reveal everything. Who had truly adapted, who had learned the lessons, who understood that patience, discipline, and certainty mattered more than impressive records. She demonstrated those qualities for 9 days straight. Tomorrow would be no different. Just another scenario. Just another mission. Just another opportunity to prove that the quiet ones who waited were the most dangerous. Maya secured her gear and lay back. 2 more days. Then deployment. Then real missions with real stakes. She'd been there before. She'd go there again. And this time, maybe some of the others would finally understand what operational precision really meant. The desert night was silent outside. Stars filled the sky. Tomorrow would bring the final test. Maya closed her eyes and let the familiar calm settle over her. Ready. Day 10 began before dawn. Morrison woke them at 0400 with a single instruction. Full equipment. Range in 30 minutes. No briefing. The shooters moved quickly, confusion mixing with anticipation. This was it. The final evaluation Morrison and Reeves had been building toward. They assembled in darkness at the advanced range. Floodlights illuminated a command post where Morrison stood with Reeves, Barnes, Hendricks, and Soto. Behind them, additional observers Maya hadn't seen before. This evaluation had an audience. Morrison's voice cut through the pre-dawn cold. Today's scenario is a live simulation of an actual mission we're planning. Your performance will determine not just deployment assignments, but mission composition. Barnes stepped forward. We have intelligence on a high-value target. Compound location. Time window. Everything you need. He paused. But this mission has a complication that makes it one of the most challenging precision operations we've attempted. Reeves pulled up imagery on a portable screen. The target appears irregularly, sometimes multiple times per day, sometimes not for days. When he appears, it's unpredictable. Brief exposures. No pattern we've identified. Hendricks continued. Previous attempts to engage this target have failed because shooters either fired at the wrong person or missed the narrow window when he was actually vulnerable. Soto added the final detail. This scenario runs for 12 hours. The target will appear at unknown intervals. You must maintain position, maintain readiness, and engage only when absolutely certain of target identification. The weight of that statement settled over the shooters. 12 hours. Unknown timing. Absolute certainty required. Morrison gestured toward the range. You'll rotate through observation positions. Some of you will maintain overwatch. Others will be primary shooters. We're evaluating your ability to sustain operational focus over extended duration. They moved to positions as dawn broke across the desert. Maya drew primary shooter for the first 4-hour block. Torres and Dalton were her spotters. Other shooters maintained overwatch from adjacent positions. The compound mock-up was elaborate. Multiple buildings, numerous figures moving through the area. Maya settled into position and began the long watch. The first hour passed slowly. Multiple figures appeared that could potentially match the target description. Maya observed each one carefully, building mental files on their patterns and characteristics. Torres provided spotting support. Figure emerging from north building. Male. Approximate age match. Security presence around him. Maya studied the figure through her scope. Height was correct. Build was similar. But something about the movement pattern was wrong. Too casual. Too unguarded. Possible, but not confirmed, Maya said. Continue observation. The figure disappeared back into the building. They waited. Second hour brought more potential sightings. Each time, Maya analyzed carefully. Each time, something didn't quite match. Wrong posture. Wrong security pattern. Wrong behavior. Dalton was getting restless. How long do we hold fire? We've seen 6 possible matches. Until we're certain, Maya said calmly. Every wrong shot gives away our position, and the target goes deeper into hiding. Third hour. The sun was climbing. Heat built. Other shooters in adjacent positions had engaged twice at figures they thought were the target. Morrison had called both as incorrect identification. Those teams were now out of the scenario. Mission failed. Torres wiped sweat from his face. Half the teams are already eliminated. Pressure is building to take a shot. Maya remained focused on the compound. Pressure doesn't change the requirement. We fire when certain, not when anxious. At 3 hours, 40 minutes, a new figure appeared. He emerged from the central building with heavy security. 4 guards. Unusual for the other figures they'd seen. Torres called it immediately. Primary figure emerging. Central building. Heavy security presence. Maya tracked him carefully. The security pattern was different. More professional. More alert. This figure was important. She studied his movement. Controlled. Aware. Scanning the perimeter before moving. That was trained behavior. Physical description matches, Dalton confirmed. Age appropriate. Height correct. Maya watched how the security positioned themselves, creating overlapping fields of protection, maintaining constant awareness. This wasn't standard compound security. This was close protection for a high-value individual. At 3 hours, 43 minutes, the figure's face turned toward their position. Just for a moment, but enough for Maya to see features clearly. Target confirmed, she said quietly. All indicators match. Security presence is consistent with high-value target protocols. She began her final calculations. Range 2,700 meters. Wind had picked up since dawn. Light was bright now, creating different visual conditions. The target was moving toward a vehicle. Window of opportunity was closing. Torres gave wind reading. 8 miles per hour. Variable direction. Southwest primary. Maya adjusted. The target paused beside the vehicle. Stationary for a moment. This was the opportunity. Maya controlled her breathing, found the rhythm, let everything else fall away. The crosshairs settled. Wind lulled briefly. She exhaled and fired. The target dropped. Morrison's voice came over radio immediately. Target confirmed. Positive identification. First round hit. Mission success. The adjacent positions went silent. For hours of observation. One shot. Mission complete. But Maya's block wasn't finished. She had 17 more minutes in the primary shooter position. She maintained her watch, scanning for any additional threats or complications. At 4 hours exactly, she cleared her weapon and transitioned to spotter role. Rivera took over as primary shooter for the next block. Morrison called break at 5 hours. Half the teams were already eliminated from incorrect target identification or missed shots. The remaining shooters gathered at the command post. Barnes addressed them directly. 4 hours into a 12-hour operation, only one team has successfully completed the mission. He looked at Maya, Torres, and Dalton. Staff Sergeant Chin's team maintained discipline, waited for positive confirmation, and executed perfectly. Reeves added, the other teams that engaged did so under pressure. They felt they needed to shoot to prove capability. He paused. That's exactly the wrong instinct for this mission profile. Morrison continued the scenario for the remaining shooters. The target would appear again, multiple times, testing different teams' ability to maintain the same discipline Maya had demonstrated. Over the next 4 hours, 2 more teams attempted engagement. One missed under pressure. One hit the wrong target. Both were eliminated. At 9 hours, Maya rotated back to primary shooter position. The afternoon heat was intense. Visibility was affected by heat shimmer. Conditions were significantly worse than the morning. She settled in and resumed the watch. Her earlier success didn't matter now. Each mission window was independent. Each required the same discipline. At 10 hours, the target appeared again. Different location, different security pattern, testing whether she could identify him under changed conditions. Maya observed carefully. The movement pattern was similar to the morning. The security behavior matched. But the visual conditions made confirmation harder. She waited, watched, gathered additional confirming details. At 10 hours, 7 minutes, she had sufficient confirmation. Target verified through multiple indicators despite poor visibility. She calculated for the heat shimmer, adjusted for changed wind patterns, and waited for the right moment. Fired. Hit. Morrison confirmed. Second successful engagement. Same target, different conditions, same outcome. Barnes was watching through a spotting scope. He lowered it slowly and looked at Reeves. That's exceptional operational consistency. The scenario continued until 12 hours complete. Of the original 12 shooters, only Maya had successfully engaged the target both times it appeared in her watch windows. One other shooter, Patterson, had achieved one successful engagement. The rest had either missed, misidentified, or failed to engage when the opportunity presented itself. Morrison gathered them for initial debrief as the sun dropped toward the mountains. Today tested your ability to maintain operational focus over extended duration, to resist pressure to perform when performing meant waiting, to trust your discipline even when others were failing around you. He looked at each shooter. Most of you struggled, not because you lacked shooting ability, but because you lacked the patience to wait for absolute certainty. Barnes stepped forward. This mission profile is real. We have targets that require exactly this capability. Patience under pressure, certainty over speed, discipline over eagerness. He paused. Staff Sergeant Chen demonstrated that capability twice today. 4 hours of observation followed by single perfect shots. That's the standard for operational deployment. Reeves added, tomorrow we conclude the evaluation with one final scenario. Then we make deployment selections. The shooters dispersed quietly. The day had been grueling. 12 hours of sustained focus. Most had failed. A few had performed adequately. Only Maya had demonstrated the level Morrison and Barnes were looking for. Torres found her as she was cleaning her rifle. For hours of watching. One shot. Then 4 more hours and another shot. He shook his head. I fired after 90 minutes this morning. Couldn't maintain the patience. It's harder than people think, Maya said. Waiting when everyone expects action. That's what separated you today. You didn't care about expectations, just about the mission. Maya secured her equipment. One more day. Whatever Morrison planned for the final scenario would test something different. Something they hadn't covered yet. She was ready. She'd spent 10 days proving that patience, discipline, and certainty were more valuable than impressive records or aggressive engagement. Tomorrow would be the final proof. Whatever came, she'd face it the same way she'd faced everything else. With the quiet confidence of someone who'd learned, through years of consequence, that the shot you didn't take could be just as important as the shot you did. The desert night settled in. Stars emerged overhead. One more day remained. Then deployment. Then real missions. Maya closed her eyes and let the familiar calm wash over her. Ready for whatever came next. Day 11. The final evaluation. The shooters assembled at 0600 knowing this was the culmination of everything. Morrison stood before them with Barnes, Reeves, Hendricks, and Soto. The senior officers looked unusually serious. Barnes spoke first. Today's scenario is the most difficult we've ever administered in this program. It combines every challenge you've faced plus complications you haven't encountered yet. Morrison continued. You'll work in pairs. You'll face equipment failures, intelligence gaps, civilian presence, time pressure, and a target that will test your ability to maintain discipline under extreme stress. Reeves added, your performance today, combined with your overall evaluation, determines deployment assignments. He paused. Those assignments will be announced immediately following the scenario. The stakes couldn't be clearer. Everything came down to the next few hours. They drew partner assignments. Maya paired with Torres. The partnership felt right. Torres had evolved more than anyone during the program, learning to value patience over aggression. Morrison briefed their specific scenario. High-value target in an urban environment. Multiple buildings. Heavy civilian presence. Unknown target appearance time. Security forces actively searching for your position. The final complication was revealed. You'll start with communication. Halfway through, communications will be severed. You'll have to complete the mission without radio contact with command or each other if separated. Torres glanced at Maya. That's brutal. Maya's expression remained calm. Then we prepare for it. They moved to their assigned position as dawn broke. The scenario was elaborate. The mock-up represented an entire city block with multiple levels, numerous figures, and realistic complexity. They established their hide position and began the long observation. Maya took primary shooting position. Torres handled spotting and security monitoring. First hour passed with numerous potential sightings. None confirmed. Maya remained patient, building her understanding of the environment's patterns. Torres provided steady updates on security force movements. They're sweeping closer. We'll need to relocate soon. At 1 hour 15 minutes, they moved to a secondary position. The movement was risky but necessary. They resettled and resumed observation. Second hour brought the first equipment failure. Maya's primary scope developed a malfunction. She transitioned immediately to backup optics. Torres handed her his rangefinder when hers failed 30 minutes later. They were adapting on the fly, working together seamlessly. At 2 hours 40 minutes, Morrison's voice came over radio. Communications failure. You're on your own. Complete the mission or abort. Your decision. The radio went silent. They were alone now. No support. No guidance. Just the mission and their judgment. Torres looked at Maya. Do we continue? Maya scanned the environment through her backup scope. Target hasn't appeared. Security is closing in. Conditions are degrading. She paused. We continue. Mission still viable. Third hour. Security forces passed within 200 meters of their position. Maya and Torres remained motionless. Any movement would compromise them. After the security sweep passed, Torres whispered. That was close. Maya was already back on her scope, scanning for the target. Stay focused. At 3 hours 20 minutes, a new figure appeared. Heavy security. Professional movement. Maya tracked him carefully. Torres confirmed through his spotting scope. Physical description matches. Security pattern is consistent with high-value target. Maya studied every detail. The way he moved, how the security positioned themselves, his awareness level. Everything pointed to this being their target. But something felt wrong. The timing was too convenient. Right after the security sweep, right when pressure was highest, Maya held fire. Keep observing. Torres questioned quietly. All indicators match. Why wait? Because it feels like a test. Maya kept her scope on the figure. Real operations have deception. This could be a decoy to see if we fire under pressure. They watched for 3 more minutes. The figure's behavior remained consistent. Security stayed tight. Everything looked legitimate. But Maya's instinct wouldn't settle. She'd learned to trust that instinct through years of operations where ignoring it got people killed. The figure disappeared back into a building. The opportunity passed. Torres exhaled. What if that was him? What if we just let the target escape? Then we wait for another opportunity. Maya's voice was steady. I'm not taking a shot I'm not certain about. Not today. Not ever. 4th hour arrived. No target reappearance. Security forces were conducting another sweep, closer this time. Torres monitored their approach. We need to move again or they'll find us. They relocated to a 3rd position, further back, with a different angle. The movement cost them time and exposed them briefly, but staying would have meant compromise. At 4 hours, 30 minutes, a different figure emerged. This one moved differently. Less guarded. More natural. The security around him was present, but more relaxed. Maya tracked him carefully. Something about this one felt right. Torres was quiet, letting her work through the assessment. The figure paused in an open area. His face turned toward their position briefly. Maya saw his features clearly. That's him, she said quietly. Real target. Previous figure was decoy. Torres checked his scope. How can you tell? Body language. Security positioning is protective, but not theatrical. And his face matches the intelligence photos exactly. The target was moving toward cover. Window closing. Maya ran through her calculations rapidly. Range 2,800 meters. Wind was gusting. Her backup scope made the shot harder. Target was moving. Everything was against her. Except certainty. She knew this was the target. That certainty made the difficult shot possible. She led the target's movement slightly. Accounted for wind. Adjusted for the backup scope's limitations. The target paused for 2 seconds. Maya fired. The figure dropped. Flares went up from the command post. Mission complete signal. Morrison's voice came over reactivated radio. Target eliminated. Positive identification. First round hit despite equipment failures and communication loss. Torres sat back from his spotting scope. You waited through the decoy. Maintained position through security sweeps. Relocated twice. And still made that shot with backup equipment. Maya cleared her weapon. That's the job. They returned to the command post where other teams were arriving. Most looked frustrated or exhausted. A few looked defeated. Morrison gathered everyone for final debrief. Today tested everything simultaneously. Most of you struggled. Some performed adequately. He looked at Maya and Torres. One team executed perfectly. Barnes stepped forward. Staff Sergeant Chun faced equipment failures, communication loss, security pressure, a decoy target, and still maintained discipline to wait for positive confirmation before engaging. Reeves added, when she fired, it was with complete certainty despite degraded equipment and difficult conditions. That shot at 2,800 meters with backup optics under pressure is among the best I've witnessed. Hendricks spoke next. The decoy target was specifically designed to test whether you'd fire under pressure. Most teams engaged the decoy. Only Chin's team recognized it as deception and waited for the real target. Barnes looked around at all the shooters. You've completed one of the most challenging precision shooting programs we offer. You should all be proud. But operational deployment requires a specific set of capabilities that goes beyond excellent marksmanship. He pulled out a folder. Deployment assignments are as follows. The next few minutes were tense. Barnes called several names for various assignments. Some shooters received operational deployment. Others were assigned to training roles or returned to their units with commendations. When he called Maya's name, The room went quiet. Staff Sergeant Maya Chun, you're assigned to Special Operations Task Force Delta as Senior Precision Shooter. You'll deploy within 30 days. He paused. Additionally, you're assigned as lead instructor for future iterations of this program. Your approach represents the standard we're trying to develop. Torres received operational deployment to a different unit. Dalton was assigned to a training role. Rivera returned to his unit with strong recommendations. Patterson received operational assignment. After the formal announcements, Barnes approached Maya privately. Staff Sergeant, your performance over 11 days was exceptional. But more than that, you changed how the other shooters think about the job. I just did what I was trained to do, sir. Barnes shook his head. You did more than that. You demonstrated that patience under pressure is a teachable skill. That discipline can be maintained even when everyone around you is failing. That's leadership. The afternoon was reserved for final administrative tasks and departure preparation. Maya packed her equipment methodically, processing the past 11 days. Torres found her before dinner. I wanted to thank you for teaching me something I should have learned years ago. You taught yourself, Maya said. I just provided examples. Torres smiled. I came here thinking I was elite because of my records. He paused. You showed me that elite means something different. It means reliability under pressure. Certainty over speed. Discipline over ego. You'll do well in your deployment. Because of what I learned here. From watching you work. Torres extended his hand. If we end up on missions together, I'll be grateful to have you as Overwatch. Maya shook his hand. Same. That evening, Morrison gathered the departing shooters one final time. You came here as excellent precision shooters. You leave as operators who understand what that title really means. He looked at each of them. Some of you will face combat. All of you will face pressure. Remember what you learned here. The shooters departed over the next morning. Maya was among the last to leave, finishing final administrative tasks. Morrison walked her to the vehicle that would take her back to base. Staff Sergeant, you've set a new standard for this program. Future classes will study your performance. Maya loaded her equipment. I just hope they learn the right lessons from it. Morrison smiled. That patience and discipline matter more than impressive shots. Exactly that, sir. The drive back through the desert gave Maya time to reflect. 11 days. From initial skepticism to final recognition. From doubt to respect. From proving she belonged to proving she was exceptional. But the real test still lay ahead. Deployment. Real missions. Real stakes. She'd been there before. She'd go there again. And this time, maybe some of the others finally understood what it took to succeed. Not the loudest shots. Not the longest ranges. Not the most impressive records. Just patience, discipline, certainty, and the quiet confidence of someone who knew that when it mattered most, the shot would land exactly where it needed to. The desert stretched endlessly in every direction. Maya closed her eyes and let the vehicle carry her toward whatever came next. Ready. 30 days passed in a blur of preparation. Maya returned to her unit, completed pre-deployment training, and prepared her equipment for operational assignment. The High Desert Precision Center felt like another lifetime, but the lessons remained fresh. She arrived at the Special Operations Task Force compound on a Tuesday morning. The facility was larger than she expected, more professional, with the quiet efficiency of a unit that operated constantly. The operations officer, a major named Kane, met her at the gate. Staff Sergeant Chun, welcome to the task force. He gestured toward the main building. Colonel Barnes wants to brief you immediately. Barnes' office overlooked the training ranges. He stood as Maya entered and returned her salute. At ease, Staff Sergeant. Have a seat. Maya sat, curious about the immediate briefing. Barnes pulled up files on his computer. You're here because we have a situation that requires exactly your capabilities. A high-value target we've been tracking for 8 months. He's cautious, paranoid, and extremely difficult to engage. He showed Maya's satellite imagery of a compound in a mountainous region. Our previous attempts failed because shooters either engaged the wrong target or missed the narrow windows when he was vulnerable. Sound familiar? Like the scenario from Day 10, sir. Barnes nodded. That scenario was based on this target. We used it to identify someone with the patience and discipline to succeed where others failed. He pulled up more intelligence. The target appears irregularly, sometimes multiple times per week, sometimes not for weeks. When he does appear, it's brief, unpredictable, heavily secured. Maya studied the imagery. What's the operational timeline? You deploy in 72 hours. Small team. You're the primary shooter. Torres is your spotter. 2 security personnel for protection. Torres requested the assignment. Barnes smiled slightly. He specifically asked to work with you. Said he'd learned more from 11 days at the center than from 12 years of competition shooting. Over the next 3 days, Maya prepared with intensity that surprised even herself. She studied every piece of intelligence on the target, learned his patterns or lack thereof, understood his security protocols, memorized the terrain. Torres arrived 2 days before deployment. They spent hours reviewing the mission profile together, building the same coordination they demonstrated during the final evaluation. You ready for this? Torres asked during a break. Maya checked her equipment. Same as the center, just with real consequences. That's what makes you good at this. Torres looked at her directly. You never forget the consequences. The deployment was classified. They flew into theater under darkness, moved to a forward operating base, then to a concealed observation post overlooking the target compound. The hide site was well constructed. Previous teams had occupied it during their failed attempts. Maya and Torres settled in for what might be days or weeks of observation. The first 48 hours brought no target appearance, just routine compound activity. Maya observed, recorded, learned the patterns of the security forces and other inhabitants. Torres provided steady support. He'd evolved completely from the aggressive competitor she'd met 11 days earlier. Now he understood that patience was its own skill. On day 3, a figure emerged that matched some target indicators. Maya observed carefully. Security pattern was wrong. Movement too casual. Not him, she said quietly. Torres confirmed. Agreed. Decoy or coincidence, but not our target. They continued watching. Day 4. Day 5. The pressure built, but Maya remained focused. This was the job, waiting for the exact right moment. On day 6, at 1400 hours, everything changed. Heavy security emerged from the central building. Professional, alert, creating a protective formation. Torres called it immediately. Primary security pattern. This could be him. Maya tracked the formation through her scope. The security moved to a vehicle, then paused. A figure emerged from the building. Surrounded. Protected. Moving with the caution of someone who knew they were hunted. She studied every detail. Height matched intelligence estimates. Build was correct. Movement pattern showed trained awareness. Security behavior indicated high-value principle. The figure's face turned briefly toward their position. Maya saw features that matched the intelligence photos exactly. Target confirmed, she said quietly. Positive identification. Range 2,900 meters. Wind was gusting from multiple directions. The target was moving toward vehicle. Window of opportunity was closing rapidly. Maya ran calculations at speed born from years of practice. Wind, range, movement, the angle of light, every variable that could affect the shot. Torres provided updates. Target moving to vehicle. 10 seconds to compromise. Maya found her breathing rhythm. Let everything else fall away. The world narrowed to crosshairs and target. 5 seconds. The target paused beside the vehicle door. Stationary for a brief moment. Maya exhaled and fired. The target dropped. Security immediately moved to cover him, but the damage was done. Torres confirmed through his spotting scope. Target down. Mission complete. They maintained position while security forces searched frantically for the shooter's location. The hide site's concealment held. After 2 hours, Maya and Torres extracted according to plan. The compound erupted into chaos behind them. Security forces knew someone was hit, but couldn't locate the shooters. Maya and Torres moved carefully through their extraction route, covered by their security team. Back at the forward base, Barnes was waiting. Mission success confirmed. Target eliminated. Single shot at 2,900 meters under difficult conditions. He looked at Maya with something like respect. 8 months of failed attempts. You succeeded in 6 days. Maya secured her weapon. We waited for certainty, sir. The others probably pushed for speed. Barnes nodded. That's exactly what post-mission analysis showed. Previous teams engaged multiple times at possible targets. You waited for the actual target and executed perfectly. The debrief lasted hours. Maya walked them through every decision. Why she'd rejected the decoy on day 3. How she'd built pattern recognition over 6 days. What convinced her the final engagement was the actual target. Torres added his perspective. Working with Chun, you learn that patience isn't passive. It's active observation, building certainty through sustained focus. Barnes made extensive notes. This mission profile is becoming more common. Targets who understand we're hunting them, who use deception and unpredictable patterns. He looked at Maya. You've proven there's a methodology for success against this profile. After the debrief, Maya found a moment alone to process what had happened. 6 days of observation. 1 shot. Mission complete. Exactly as she'd been trained. Exactly as she'd demonstrated at the center. Torres found her cleaning her rifle. You made it look easy, but I know it wasn't. Nothing about waiting 6 days in position is easy, Maya said. But it's necessary. I used to think speed was everything. Torres checked his own equipment. Now I understand that timing is everything. Speed without timing is just noise. Maya smiled. That's a good evolution. Over the following weeks, Maya conducted 3 more missions with similar profiles. Each required extended observation. Each demanded patience under pressure. Each concluded with a single perfect shot when absolute certainty arrived. Her success rate caught attention at higher levels. She was assigned to brief other units on her methodology, to teach the approach that had proven so effective. The briefings always followed the same pattern. Maya would explain that patience was a skill, not a personality trait. That discipline could be developed through understanding consequences. That certainty came from sustained observation and pattern recognition. Some students understood immediately. Others struggled with the concept. A few, like Torres had been, needed to experience failure before they could accept the approach. 6 months into her deployment, Maya received a message from Morrison. The next iteration of the High Desert Precision Center was beginning. He wanted her input on curriculum modifications based on operational experience. Maya wrote a detailed response, emphasized the importance of extended observation training, recommended more scenarios with decoys and deception, suggested evaluation criteria that rewarded patience over speed. Morrison replied with gratitude and implemented several of her recommendations. Torres, now deployed to a different theater, sent occasional messages. Each one described missions where patience had made the difference, where waiting for certainty had prevented civilian casualties or mission failure. Maya saved those messages. They confirmed what she believed from the beginning, that the quiet approach, the patient approach, the certain approach was more than just her personal method. It was a teachable, replicable methodology that worked. One evening, Maya sat in her quarters reviewing mission reports. 12 successful engagements. 12 patient observations followed by 12 perfect shots. 0 collateral damage. 0 misidentifications. 0 failures. The numbers told a story. But the real story was in what didn't happen. The shots she didn't take because certainty never arrived. The targets she let escape rather than risk civilian casualties. The opportunities she rejected because something felt wrong. Those non-shots were as important as the successful engagements. Maybe more important. Maya closed her reports and secured her equipment for the next mission. Another difficult target. Another extended observation requirement. Another test of patience under pressure. She was ready. She'd been ready since the moment she'd learned that consequences mattered more than records. That reliability outweighed impressiveness. That the quiet ones who waited were more dangerous than the loud ones who rushed. The High Desert Precision Center felt like years ago now, though only months had passed. Those 11 days had changed everything. Not because they taught her new skills, but because they'd validated the approach she'd developed through hard experience. And now others were learning. Torres, Rivera, Patterson, the new students at the center, operators across multiple theaters who'd heard about her success rate and wanted to understand her methodology. The lesson was spreading. Patience as active skill, discipline as force multiplier, certainty as operational requirement. Maya looked out her window at the night sky. Stars filled the darkness, countless and sharp. Somewhere out there, targets moved through their routines, believing they were safe, protected by unpredictability and deception. They were wrong, because somewhere in the darkness, patient shooters were watching, learning patterns, building certainty, waiting for the exact moment when the shot was guaranteed. And when that moment came, when everything aligned perfectly, the quiet ones would fire once, and mission complete would echo across secure channels. That was the job. That was the craft. That was what it meant to be truly elite. Not the longest shot, not the fastest engagement, not the most impressive record. Just patience, discipline, certainty, and the absolute knowledge that when you pulled the trigger, the target would drop. Maya closed her eyes and let the familiar calm settle over her. Tomorrow would bring another mission, another opportunity to demonstrate that the quiet approach worked. She was ready. She'd always been ready. And now, finally, others understood why.